Masquerade! Paper faces on parade! Masquerade! Hide your face so the world will never find you.
Bum bum.
Masquerade!
Poppin' pussies on parade.
Jesus. Welcome back to Showgays. This week we are, for the first time
This is
ever,
for the first time in Showgays history.
We're
bringing back an eliminated queen.
We're reviving a musical.
Yes, we did it. We have done it. We have successfully revived a musical.
Due to overwhelming support from me and Molly, just the two of us during the showies, we decided that we were going to remount a Showgaze production of Phantom.
Phantom doesn't get many choices to be remounted because usually it's still in its first run. So having a revival is unusual.
True.
Yeah.
It's true. So we will be discussing, RJ, you listened to a little bit of Phantom earlier.
Yes, I listened to the episode. Our original, our ORC, original recording cast of the Phantom of the Opera back in March 31st, 2018.
Wow.
Yeah. We weren't even engaged yet. Like, it was way back.
Yeah. I listened to like the first, I'm going to say 30 minutes and like a little bit of the end on like fast speed. And the funniest part was when you were trying to remember a movie that Gerard Butler was in and you were like, maybe it was Contagion. That's the one about like the disease or whatever. And then I was like, oh, remember when Contagion was just like some movie?
That's just wild. Some movie.
Yeah. And not a thing people compulsively watch for the first 6 months of the pandemic.
Right at the start of the pandemic, my mom watched Contagion and was like, you should watch it. And I was like, I think that would be a really bad idea if I watched it.
I remember we were quarantining in her house.
Queering. Hello. Sorry.
I heard it downstairs. Like, she was watching it. And I was like, I'm not going downstairs. I live in Contagion. Why the fuck would I want to watch it?
Wild.
But I'd already seen it before. So I was like, I know that.
Yeah.
Is that Gwyneth?
Gwyneth was patient zero.
Gwyneth Paltrow's patient zero. That's not the one by M. Night, right? That's a separate one.
I don't know.
I've started a sentence like 6 times.
I know.
Molly, do you want to start participating in this pod, or I don't know what we're doing?
Speak up! Come on.
There's a folding ideas video essay about compulsively watching Contagion that I recommend if you're gonna have space to it. I'll revisit early pandemic times.
Yeah, is it vintage now that it's like 3 years later? Almost 3 years?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But
I do think people like it because Gwyneth Paltrow is patient zero. And it feels like comeuppance in some way. You know what I mean?
Yes, for singing Turkey Lurkey Time on Glee. Yeah. No, that was Sarah Jessica Parker. I'm so sorry. Parker. She sang Forget You.
Yes, she did.
Wow.
This week, RJ, you have the task to summarize the plot of 2004's The Phantom of the Opera, a movie that we know you've watched at least twice in your life. Your time does start now.
In 1870 Paris, the Opéra Populaire operates under new management under Monsieurs Firmin and André, and a new young patron, the Viscount Raoul de Chagny, who is recognized by dancer Christine Daae as her childhood crush. Carlotta the soprano refuses to perform after almost getting crushed by a set piece. Mme Giry, the company ballet instructor, suggests Christine as her replacement, as she has been receiving vocal training from an unknown teacher. The show is a massive hit. Christine and Raoul rekindle their love, but the opera ghost appears to Christine as her vocal teacher. He is the masked Phantom of the Opera, who takes her to his lair and professes his love to her. Christine pulls off his mask, and the Phantom reacts violently but apologizes and brings Christine back to the opera. The Phantom has demanded Christine to be the star of their next performance, but the managers refuse, leading the Phantom to kill a stagehand in the middle of the performance. At a New Year's masquerade, the Phantom reappears to demand his opera Don Juan Triumphant to be performed, which causes Raoul and the management to hatch a plan to catch him. In the performance, the Phantom kills the lead tenor to play the lead with Christine, but she unmasks him in front of the audience. So he captures Christine and sets the opera on fire by crashing the giant chandelier over the audience. As Raoul saves Christine, the Phantom catches him and forces Christine to choose between a new life with him, or she can refuse and he will kill Raoul. Christine pities the Phantom and kisses him, which moves the Phantom into freeing them both as they escape. The Phantom escapes to love Christine from afar for the rest of her life, shunned by the rose he left her years later at her grave.
And that was 1 minute and 15 seconds.
It was really hard to do this. This was very hard.
It is a hard one. I mean, I think what's often difficult about summaries is that there's so much you have to include up front that's like not actually in the movie in order to set up everything. And then you end up skipping so much in the movie.
Yeah.
So like we maybe could have skipped some stuff in the middle, but also then I fear that our listeners would be left, without sufficient information to follow along.
Yes, and I think that was ultimately my challenge because it felt like I had to add so much at the top to like set up how the story kind of like moves into motion. But then I fully had to really skip like why Mme Giry, or like why the Phantoms, what the Phantoms like hold is over the opera, and it's mostly Mme Giry. Like I basically had to like skip that. Didn't even mention Meg. Sorry, girl.
Forgettable. Unnecessary. Yeah.
Just remember that Molly called Meg forgettable. Just remember that for later. Molly, what is since you were the one who we don't know, what your background is, we'd love to know your relationship to this musical.
Yeah, I watched this musical, I think when I was a freshman in high school with one of my friends who really liked it, and hit me right at the right time that I was like, fantastic, I love it, it's great. I have never seen the stage show, but I've watched this movie several times at this point. And I have been to this opera house, but yeah.
Inside?
Haven't engaged with it otherwise. Yes. When I was in high school, went to France with that same friend. It was like a school trip, but she was also on it. And we all wanted to go to the opera house because of this movie having come out and everything.
Obviously, yeah.
So we as a group, we got tickets actually to see a ballet there because we wanted to experience something, and that's what happened to be playing. And let me tell you, the acoustics are so good. So we got like an obscured view box, like one of those like way up in the rafters ones, and you could hear the dancer's breath from
oh my gosh,
hundreds of feet away. You could hear the soft shoes on the stage, like amazing acoustic. So that was really, really cool to be able to go to the opera house, but not much of a relationship, I would say, with the stage musical in a way, because I don't know. I've seen like clips, obviously, of live performances and that sort of thing, but this movie is kind of my real knowledge of Phantom, which I feel like is probably going to make some people mad. Maybe not you two, but I think maybe some of our listeners might get frustrated.
RJ?
So I initially listened to the episode the first time we did it because I was like, well, we probably already did a relationship. We did not do a relationship back then.
Oh.
So we can also still talk about a relationship. But I had seen the, like on Netflix, the Sierra Bodges version of the production, this West End production of
the
Phantom.
25th anniversary concert.
So that was my first time seeing Phantom. And then for Showgays, we saw this movie. So
that's it.
But growing up, like, my mom was definitely much more of the Jesus Christ Superstar Evita, Joseph camps of Andrew Lloyd Webber.
The early era.
So Phantom, I only knew like through osmosis and pop culture, like knowing like The Mask, certain songs.
It seems impossible to have no sense that this exists.
Yes.
Even if you weren't a musical person.
Because it's also like, I would say more than Cats, that this is like what people think about as like when you either like parody musicals or like you like joke about musicals. This is like the go-to like image is like the Phantom of the Opera.
Somehow it's also become combined with like it's the joke you can easily make about like tourists that see musicals on Broadway is like, oh, they're just here to see Phantom.
They want they want to be like, what is Broadway? If I Wikipedia a Broadway musical, what is like the first thing that I see?
Right. It's also not helped by the fact that this was the first show to do like a Vegas residency that shortened its time so that people could like get in but also get back out to gamble too. They like did like a 90-minute version of this musical, which I'm sure slaps.
And I think
I'm sure it's great.
I would love to see. Let's all go to Vegas. I think it's also sort of like the ultimate mega musical, right? Is it a Cameron McIntosh produced?
It is.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
So
it
like
sure
that,
is.
the spectacle where it's like the chandelier is like the biggest character in some ways, like that sort of a vibe. I think it is iconic for all of those reasons.
So I saw this musical when I was in like 8th grade or whatever. And it was like the era of like Rent, Phantom, Wicked. It was like all happening at the same time for the same age group. Even though I guess it was maybe because Rent was getting its like movie made like I think a year later than this or something like that. But everything was just happening around the same time.
Yeah.
So I was very much into it at that point. I had the deluxe soundtrack for the movie, so I knew, which includes like a lot of the dialogue interspersed, so like I can like
Molly, Adam was reciting dialogue when we were watching this.
What a treat to be in a room with someone who's mouthing the lines to a movie.
If only it was mouthing. If only it was mouthing.
It was voicing, accents included.
And honey,
different pitches for different characters. Like it was,
and the accents are aplenty in this film.
Oh yeah.
Accents abound. So I have it like basically memorized from that standpoint. But after senior year of high school, we went to New York, and we saw 4 shows. We saw In the Heights, we saw Promises, we saw La Cage aux Folles, and we saw Phantom. And we sat in like the fucking nosebleeds at Phantom, but it was good.
What did you rank Phantom as in those 4?
In my 4, probably the lowest. Not that it was. I thought all of them were really good. I liked all 4 productions. I loved La Cage. I think that was my favorite when we saw those 4. But I also really
That's a nice. Sorry, I was just gonna say it's a nice variety of shows.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was none of them. It didn't feel like we were repeating the same style show. I think the closest is probably La Cage and Promises, but even then, like Promises is such like a comedy that it was. I don't know. It was good. But yeah, it's a good show. I have no idea who we saw as like the amount of Christines and which
24th iteration of the cast that was.
I have no idea. They did a great job. I loved Carlotta, a theme that is recurring throughout my time with this piece. But yeah, I like Phantom. I do. I'm trying to think if I would say either this or probably Joseph is my favorite Andrew Lloyd Webber, but it's probably this because it's so accessible.
I will go on record and say this is the only good Andrew Lloyd Webber musical.
You can. A lot of people would agree.
A lot of people would agree.
Yeah.
I think before, because I was gonna say before watching this, I held like Jesus Christ and Evita higher just because that's what I was like. I had, and then I think I had a dream once where we talked about Evita, but I don't remember anymore. But I will say like this is the most of Andrew Lloyd Webber's like vision fully realized. Like it's like this is it feels like his Julie Taymor's Lion King of like this is me at my core, and so I can just like fully like express.
This kind of melodrama is where his access is best suited.
Yes,
a gothic romance for sure.
Yeah. I will say before we leave relationships, I did listen to that episode that we did when it was just us, March 31st, 2018. And just some notes. We definitely noted about like the movie quality, like the video movie quality. Like we kept saying like it looked like this was made on Windows Movie Maker. Like that was like a big theme when we were watching it.
It's definitely shot on like early digital.
We talked about like the ages across the characters from the like Phantom, Raoul, and Mme Giry. That was a big point that we made sure to really nail down a lot.
Great.
We did a lot of Drag Race references. We said a lot of thwarps.
Can only imagine.
Lots of tens acrosses the board. And it was funny because then we were like, this is for the few people who like know Drag Race and like we really said that.
Small little show.
And I was like a small little show. And now it's like literally like
what season were we on in 2018?
Season 10.
I think it was 10.
So we just moved to VH1.
What I was thinking about is that I think season 10 was the last time I was excited about a new season of Drag Race.
Wow.
I always end up happy to be watching it once I get going. And I did watch the two opening episodes since last time we spoke. But since season 10, every time a new season comes out, I have to be like, okay, you're gonna like this. Like you have to go turn it on, and then you'll get to know them, and then you'll be excited. But like, I don't get excited before it happens anymore.
I'm the same way. I used to like do the like meet the queens and watch all this like the promo material and get really excited, and I just like can't be bothered anymore.
Yeah, I would much rather just like, I'll watch the show and then see what edit they give the queens, and that's how I'll find my favorite. Because it's, but I will say
I don't watch it Untucked anymore either.
Yeah, we don't either. We just like pick up people. I'm actually more excited about the international seasons. Like I really liked Canada versus the World. I liked the UK seasons, and I obviously love Drag Race Philippines so much. So, but yeah,
I gotta get on some of this, but yeah. I just it's the Drag Race fatigue.
It is. So yeah, the one thing we kept also bringing up was like Adam kept making the joke that time was not up by then, because Time's Up was big at the time, and we focused primarily on Phantom and
there's so much media in our history that can get me canceled so easily. So it's nice that, it's just archived for anyone to take a gander at.
We literally just kept bringing like, listen, time was not up back then. And so he was able to do all of these things to her. And then also just noticed that like, I think this was when, so 2018, we did 2 episodes and then we took a year break. And then back in 2020 like late 2019, early 2020 was when we're going back in Mary Poppins. And so this was the last episode before that break, and I literally was not listening to Adam. Like, he was just explaining the plot of the movie, and I kept being like, oh, because they did this, right? Because she did this, and Adam was like, no, it's because this is this. I was like, we were like not in the same whatever. And I could hear Friedrich biting his bone in the background. I was filling up water at a specific point of the episode where and I heard water being poured from my Brita to a glass next to this hot mic. And I was like, we should not have been given the freedom of speech at this time. Like, we should have been silent.
We should have.
Not. I was like, I also had to listen to it in fast speed because
time was up for this podcast. That's what time's up.
Not listen to how dumb we both sounded. Oh my god! But anyway, we're intelligent now. I just want to say, 5 years.
The beauty. Can I just interrupt you because you are spiraling? The beauty of adding Molly to this podcast is that you can still elect to just not really participate because Molly and I will just keep going at a topic.
Me listening to this episode and giving you these bullet points is the most research I've ever done in a new Showgays.
So. I ran out of time to listen. I was going to listen to your old app, and then I ran out of time. So this is very appreciated. And Rita did tell me that she feels like, RJ, you have an important role for sometimes when Adam and I start to talk past each other. That you come in and you're like, here's the thing you're both trying to get at. Because I've been listening to you try to articulate this. So we need that third person sometimes to come in, know? Yeah, it's an important part of the dynamic.
Well, let's talk about the history of Phantom. So I thought I was just going to be discussing the book and then the musical and then the movie. But we are going to also be talking about 2 other things. So hold on to your butts because this is going to take a while.
I will say this was the most vocal I've seen Adam research. Like, there were so many times he like gasped loudly as he was doing research.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this must be a...
There are things I was like, I almost went into this being like, I don't really need to do any research because we had done this once before and blah, 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 blah. No, I'm so glad I did because
the catacombs, mama.
Also, I started reading Phantom because it's obviously free because it's so old. So I'm on chapter like 3 and it's good.
Okay.
What did you start? 2 years ago?
No, I started today. That's what I was doing earlier. So The Phantom of the Opera, published in 1911 in English, was written by Gaston Leroux. It was in that like very like 19th century, early 20th century, like printed in a newspaper bit by bit. And then finally, when it was done, would be published. Serialized. Thank you. That's the word. So it was very that. So that technically the publications began in the Parisian newspaper in 1908. So he was inspired by Edgar Allan Poe and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. and the story is told from like a documentarian journalist point of view. So it's like, I've found all this information about this alleged disappearance of Christine Daae, and now I'm going to tell you about it. So that I thought was really interesting because I didn't realize that that was like the way the novel is set up. I'm just going to tell you some big, broad strokes. This is pretty much the book. I will be completely honest. I was very impressed.
Yeah. Well, there are some differences. I think we both did some research on Phantom. Did you read about the event that inspired him to write the novel, though? Can I back us up for just a second?
The chandelier crash?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I saw that it was like a historical event, but I didn't look further into it. I just know that one person.
So this I got from a Lindsay Ellis video, which was my entire research, was that I just watched a bunch of Lindsay Ellis videos about this because I love her. And she is obsessed with Phantom, has done so many videos about various aspects of Phantom. There was a concierge, which I'm not sure what that means in this context.
Back in the day, yeah.
But I don't know if that's like an usher, it was my guess, or like somebody working in like the businessy side of it, who got killed by a counterweight to the chandelier on her first day of work. I know. But so that was just like an accident that it wasn't properly secured. But basically, I guess that this guy's sort of inspiration was that he thought like, well, what if that were not just an accident? What if someone did it deliberately? And that was like his spark point to write basically a mystery novel of like who caused the chandelier to fall, and then he added the like who kidnapped Christine Daae, like all of that other stuff. So I thought that was a cool piece of information, that it was like ripped from the headlines and then like totally spun into this fantastical tale just as a result of this one real event.
Do you remember what year the crash was?
I don't, but I think it was like 30 years before he started writing this.
I thought that's right. Okay, I think it was like in the 18 something.
I mean, maybe the 1870s, since that's when this is set. Yeah.
Yeah, I did see a little bit of that. So anyway, I'm just going to talk about some of the differences. So the chandelier falls in the scene in which Carlotta croaks like a toad. Eric is the Phantom, by the way. His name is Eric with a K, E-R-I-K.
Just Eric.
Just Eric. He keeps Christine underground for 2 weeks. The first time he steals her.
Which, I mean, I don't think it was that long in the movie, but it was like a certain time because they were like, she's been missing.
I always thought it was like a day because it seems to be the next day they're all like, oh, whatever. But yeah, definitely 2 weeks. And then she like asks to go back and they're like, okay, fine. There's a character called the Persian who's completely removed. And he kind of is just like an odd eccentric from like not Paris. So there's your fun exotic element.
I can tell you more about the Persian. There's a whole Lindsay Ellis video just about the Persian.
Oh, wow.
Called The Most Whitewashed Character in Literary History, I believe. I'm linking all of these in the show notes because I really would recommend, unlike a lot of my sources that are like dry academic articles I assume no one's reading, this time go watch all these videos. He is actually, so in the first half or so of the like serialization / novel, there's a lot of red herring characters. There's a lot of like suspicious characters around the opera to make you wonder who is the Phantom. And then it's revealed like, oh, it's just like a guy whose full-time gig is being the Phantom. It wasn't any of these people. It was somebody who's like in the basement, just like being the Phantom. And the Persian, it turns out, is like he's been exiled from Persia. He's like a cousin of the Shah's. And the reason he's called the Persian is that in the style of like, oh, this is like me as a real journalist reporting these stories. It's that he's trying to like hide an anonymous from his past.
Source. Oh,
so yeah. So he's like, oh, I'm not going to reveal to you what this guy's name is because I don't want to like, cause him harm or anything like that in part of this framing device. And Eric spent time in Persia with the Persian. So it's basically like we were young men together. We went through stuff together kind of thing. And he does the role that Giry plays a lot in this version of sort of being his like apologist wingman character.
Yeah.
But he's so central to the novel that actually the second half is told mostly from his perspective. It's mostly like his recounting of what happened. So he like brings Raoul down to the Phantom, all this stuff. And at the end of the novel, the Phantom like comes to him after Christine has left and is like, here's what happened. Here's how I feel about it. Like all this. So like he gets the like final character resolution for the Phantom essentially because he is like the best friend of the Phantom character. So he's actually like a very central part of the whole novel, but then is like almost immediately left out of almost all adaptations because like nobody knows what to do with him. So they either like totally whitewash him. Like there are some movies where he's the Persian, but then he like turns out to be like secretly a white French inspector, or he's like that role is given to other characters, or like there's one apparently like romance novel from the 90s on the fandom that was like very popular that has a whole like everyone being like, your culture sucks, dude. You really like don't treat women very well in Persia.
Oh, God.
So yeah, the whole video is about the fact that like this is actually a very central character, and he was really progressive for the time in the sense of being like a central character who's a real person and not just a stereotype. Right. But like no one seems to know how to treat him in subsequent adaptations.
So that's the Persian, and then the opera they do is Faust. It's not Don Juan Triumphant or whatever. He kidnaps Christine to be his bride specifically, which I think is like kind of implied in because she wears the like bridal gown, but it's
more so visually.
It's very explicit that he's like, you're marrying me. The whole kiss thing when she like kisses him and that's what changes his heart, that is like true. And then he apparently like reveals that he's never been kissed in his life, even by like his own mother when he was a child. So it's a point of trauma for him. Christine promises to return the ring he gave her on his death day, and then the Persian runs a line in the newspaper which is, quote, Eric is dead. So that's like how the end of his life, I guess, happens. This is all just what I found out from Wikipedia because I haven't finished reading the book yet. Okay, so that was all. And then I just wanted to note that the original New York Times review of the book complained that it was a letdown to find out that the Phantom was just simply a guy. So I think that's a very funny review.
Yeah,
because I can't tell if they're like complaining because it wasn't one of the characters because it was a mystery, or if they're complaining like I wanted it to be a ghost. I couldn't tell if that was the complaint, but I didn't also go back to like find the original.
Because there's like I think it's Dashiell Hammond or something, but there's like the rules of mystery novels that got published. There was an author who published some proposed rules in like, I want to say the 30s or something. And one of them is like, it needs to be someone who's been introduced by the plot. It can't just be like an outside character. So like Poe's original novel that sparked the whole mystery genre, like the reveal is that it was an ape that did it, which is like not very satisfying. Couldn't really have guessed that one. Do you know what I mean? It's not in the confines. So we have certain expectations now of mysteries that like people abide by these rules that maybe it didn't really abide by at the time.
My God, Ben Shapiro would have a real field day with that one.
Oh,
I'm sure he would have been thrilled to live in 1911.
Let's move him back there, actually.
So
yeah,
in my research, I found this, which is The Phantom of the Opera from 1976, music and lyrics by Ken Hill. And you may be saying, Adam, what are you talking about? That's not Phantom of the Opera. And to that I say, oh, but wait. So he came up with this idea. It was mostly an original score. I don't remember the original guy who did the music for the first version. And then there were excerpts from the actual Faust opera. And that was in 1976. And then in 1984, he retools it. And he was like, what I really want to do with it is I want to use music that would have truly been sung in 1870 at the opera, but I'm going to change all the lyrics from these operas and make them English and like part of the story. So he uses music from composers like Verdi, Gounod, Offenbach, Mozart, Weber, Donizetti, and Boito, and then he like completely just writes new lyrics, which is like kind of a cool concept.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a cool concept.
Sarah Brightman was asked to play Christine, which she turned down. So Sarah Brightman originates the role of Christine in the West End just 2 years later. Which leads me to Sarah Brightman was married to Andrew Lloyd Webber. So Andrew Lloyd Webber and Cameron Mackintosh go to a performance in 1984. They approach Ken Hill, and afterward, they were like, we thought it was great. We'd love to turn this into a huge West End big budget production, because apparently Andrew Lloyd Webber and Ken Hill had worked together on like a regional revival of Joseph before. So they had like already a rapport. But in the end, Andrew Lloyd Webber is like, just kidding, I'm just going to do this without you. And then he proceeds to like work on Phantom of the Opera. So the Phantom of the Opera story Oh, I will say there was also a 1991. If you're interested, there was a 1991 West End run, but it closed early, even though it like garnered really good reviews. Most likely due to Phantom also running in the West End. Like Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom was running, and I'm sure that it already opened, and so I'm sure people were like, "Oh, he's this other person's trying to capitalize on like the same story. Yeah. What a shit head or whatever." And so they just didn't go see it. So they closed like 6 months later. But apparently it's really good, and there is like a 1993 recording of the whole show with the West End cast you can find allegedly.
Wow. This sounds like has real potential to become like a cult hit. You know, someone could revive this and like really do something with it.
Its last performance was I think 2015 in like Tokyo or something like that. They put it on. So the Phantom of the Opera. Okay, now we're going to Andrew Lloyd Webber. So this is 1986. Music by Andrew Lloyd Webber. Lyrics by Charles Hart and Richard Stilgoe. I'm sorry. This is the story. The story is that Andrew contacts Cameron Mackintosh about developing a new musical, and Andrew suggests Phantom out of the thin blue sky. The two previous filmed versions didn't seem viable to adapt from, but he amazingly found a secondhand copy in an old bookstore because the book was out of print at this point, and he was so swept up in the romance of the story that was why he was like, he found it so compelling, because he was like, for years I realized I've just been trying to write a great romance for the ages.
It's interesting because
I love people who mythologize their own lives. Like I to some extent I think it's fascinating, but also like you can't he's a clown. He's a flop. He's not a flop.
He's a bit of a fabulist, which is such a good word that we're seeing a resurgence of with George Santos, and I'm so happy for that contribution to the zeitgeist.
I would say his only contribution to the zeitgeist.
I think it's interesting because Lindsay Ellis, again, my one source for this whole podcast, talks about how the book is not very good. Like, it's spawned so many adaptations and versions, but it's not great literature in and of itself.
Correct.
But what Andrew Lloyd Webber really brought to the table was the whole, but what if he was sexy? Like, angle on the Phantom. That almost, like, all of the other adaptations are very much like, there's this question of like, how much of a villain is he? How much are we going to humanize him? Are we going to empathize him in the end? That kind of thing. But the idea that like Christine's actually really compelled by him is kind of an Andrew Lloyd Webber invention.
Yeah. So yeah, he just always wanted to write a great romance, I guess. Richard Stilgoe did a lot of original lyrics for the musical. He was originally partnered with Andrew Lloyd Webber for 1984's Starlight Express. But then Charles Hart, who was like a brand new lyricist just out of college or something like that, who obviously is a Nepo baby. He had like 10 connections to everybody. I don't know.
Sure.
His Wikipedia page is interesting. He came in, and Cameron Mackintosh and Andrew Lloyd Webber hire him to rewrite most of the lyrics. So it's mostly Charles Hart, and then there's some leftover stuff from Richard Stilgoe.
Is there a movie version of Starlight Express?
There is not, but God, I wish there was.
Yeah, that'd be
Do
a fun
you know
one to
the
do.
story?
Isn't it like a Greek god comes down or something like that? Or am I confusing it with Xanadu?
You're thinking Xanadu.
Xanadu.
Okay.
Honey, I'm not kidding. I literally just listened to a podcast about this.
Yeah.
It's cats, but trains.
Oh. So it's like episodic?
So each train, first of all, I'm so sorry I'm talking about this, but there's a framing device.
No, this is good background for AL Dub.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There's like a child who's running like a train, like he playing with trains. So all these trains are being played with by a child. But the trains come to life, and each train is like, I'm a steam engine train. I'm a diesel-powered train. I'm a caboose. I'm a beverage car. Like, and each one gets a song.
Wait, are they separate trains, or are they separate portions of the same train?
Both.
She's got versatility.
Yes. Some of the so only men are engines, by the way. The female characters are always a car or a whatever. Only men.
Only men
can move.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And then like the very end, this is what's wild. So like if we remember Cats, the very end is like
this is what's wild.
Yes, if we remember Cats, the end is like one of them gets to die. Congrats to them, they get to die.
It's a living
Cat.
In Starlight Express, Also, all of this has taken place on roller skates. A fact I didn't even mention, but is integral to the show. In Starlight Express, the end happens when the child wants them to do something, and they all rebel and decide on personal autonomy. And they're
this
like,
is like a Golden Compass killing God situation.
Yes, it's crazy. That's the end of the musical. I want to see it. I've never wanted to see anything more in my life.
It's interesting that we've talked before about Andrew Lloyd Webber's like relationship to Christianity and cosmology and such. And this that I have said is his only good musical really does not deal with that at all. Angels, but like it does not engage with an entire cosmic structure in the way that Cats or Starlight Express or I assume Jesus Christ Superstar. I don't really know Jesus Christ that much, but I don't know him in my heart personally, nor do I know the musical very well.
I don't know him casually, you know. I know like what he does for a living, so
I've heard of him for sure.
I like the idea that you're like, we've talked about Christianity with him before, and I'm like, we've discussed Christianity on this podcast before? I don't know. I don't think we have ever. I think it's never been brought up.
We're not interested in religion over here. But it is interesting how little it plays into other than the angel element of this whole thing, which is somewhat major, but it's not.
Yeah, it feels more like grief. Yeah, it's more like dealing with grief type stuff.
Yeah.
So that's
crazy.
Starlight Express.
Yeah.
Let's go back to
someone please make a movie out of it so that we can watch it for this podcast.
Absolutely. I want Thomas and the Tank Engine. I want Thomas and the Tank Engine.
Or we go to Germany. There's a town.
Yeah.
First of all, you know how Germany is like has a very niche interest in very niche media and stuff like that. Like they love David Hasselhoff. That's like the big funny joke. They have a like 20-year running production of Starlight Express in a theater that they built for Starlight Express. And then wait. In like 2018, I think 2019, it was gonna close. Like they were like, we're not making money anymore. The town decided that the government of the town was going to like start paying for the musical because it was so important to their culture.
That's amazing.
To their culture, fellow trains.
I do think,
and like the lobby is designed to look like a train lobby. Like it's like like this. The list of the cast members is all on that.
Where's the Vegas residency of this?
That's what I'm saying.
I do think that, like, I feel like Starlight Express has also really cut off at the knees the idea of a musical on roller skates. I feel like there's more legs to it, and we need to, like, just actually so many legs and legs that are attached to wheels. I think that we need more musicals. I think we need more musicals that explore that concept. Yeah. You know, we did Everything on Ice. What about it on wheels? Yeah.
So I can't believe I know this much because I just listened to this podcast. This is my
Southern California thing. All of a sudden, is that I want everything on rollerblades instead of on ice. Sorry,
continue. They had to. The reason like the productions, I think there was a West End and a Broadway production, but the reason they like made no money is because they had to remove 10 rows of seats in order to like build out the stage to have, because they have these ramps that go around basically the entire audience.
Your margin should not be so razor thin that 10 rows of seats takes you under.
Exactly. So that's poor business planning, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Truly that is where the Starlight Express conversation ends. So blah 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 blah. So the only things I wanted to note that truly are different from the stage production and the film are not many. I'm going to be very honest. It's simply the chandelier falls at the end of Act 1 instead of at the end of the show. And there is no dream sequence of the old circus. There's no room of mirrors that happens in the movie. There's no like Raoul falls in a water pit. That doesn't happen.
Oh yeah.
But pretty much everything else is like obviously it visually is more interesting on film because they can do that. But yeah, it's pretty much beat for beat the whole show. Let's talk about the awards it was nominated for. The Tonys it was nominated for and won. So it was nominated for Best Book of a Musical, Best Original Score, and Best Choreography. And then it won Lighting Design, Costume Design, Scenic Design, Direction, Performance by a Featured Actress, and Performance by a Leading Actor for Michael Crawford as the Phantom, as well as Best Musical. I think this was also
Michael
the
Crawford, original Sweeney.
Is he?
Or revival Sweeney. Patti LuPone Sweeney.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. He's also in a movie we've watched. He was Cornelius Hackle in Hello Dolly.
Oh.
This is obviously this is 20 years later, but yes. So those are all the Tonys. I think it's also the same year that Into the Woods was nominated.
Yeah, a perpetual sting in all musical theater kids' hearts.
Yeah.
The Phantom beat Into the Woods.
So I'd love to talk for just a moment about Andrew Lloyd Webber and plagiarism.
Okay.
So if you scroll with me in our notes section down to
scroll with me, what a term.
Down to citations. We're gonna start from the bottom link, which is I Don't Talk to Strangers. That link. We're gonna start with this one.
Okay.
This I would say is not plagiarism. I just found this interesting. This song was written by Andrew Lloyd Webber for this opera artist, and then he just used the same song, if you hear it.
But like people have done that before. Of like,
that I don't have.
Sondheim has done that.
Reusing his own song.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I just found it
It's a beautiful melody. Yeah.
It's very pretty. So let's go to did Webber steal from Pink Floyd? So start the video over at the beginning if you're able to.
Okay. I don't know. That might be too much for me and my boomer knowledge of technology.
So first it starts out with the song Echoes by Pink Floyd.
Wow.
And then it's going to play Phantom right after. So it's very close.
Looks pretty bad, I gotta be honest.
It doesn't look good for Little Miss Webber.
No, it does not look good.
At first I thought like maybe it's a quiz, maybe it's just inspiration, but then like the do like that's what really, come on.
It's pretty close. And also Phantom, the song Phantom of the Opera, which I didn't even write down in the list of songs we're supposed to listen to, which is very funny. I would say in the musical is the most 80s sounding because it has the like techno,
the synthy,
yeah. So that's interesting. This one is the one that's I think the most fascinating. So the link is 4 times Andrew Lloyd Webber sounded like Puccini. So a bit of context before we start the video.
Okay.
Puccini sued the Puccini estate sued Andrew Lloyd Webber over what we're about to listen to, and they did not win because it was settled out of court. But the fact that it was settled out of court
gives me
pause.
Yes.
Gives me pause.
That
okay. Rita's gonna write in with her lawyer expertise and tell you that does not necessarily. It's not an admission of guilt to settle out of court. It is often more cost effective to simply settle it and not, continue with the dispute. So it is in no way an admission of guilt to settle out of court.
It would be interesting to have Rita listen to all of these and tell us what she.
Yes, Rita, listen to every episode of Showgays and just write in with all of the legal angles to every episode that we put out.
Yeah, would this fly?
So
now Puccini, I want to say before we start, because I thought it was interesting that they could even sue him. Puccini was alive from 1858 to 1924. So, but some of his music was still not in the public domain by the time that Webber was.
I guess I don't know how any of that works.
I thought it was 70, but also that it had been extended because of Disney specifically.
Yes, like 94 years or something like that.
Fewer than that. It used to only be like 30 or 40 years.
Rita, are you on the call? Rita?
Can you
call
I know that you're an expert in copyright law specifically.
Law.
Just kidding.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know for sure.
We'll have to assume. I'm sure that if it was just, like,
their lawyers
relevant, it would not have. They would not have been able to even settle. So yeah.
So anyway, this piece, it's a little bit of melody from an aria in La Fanu.
Oh God, Adam.
It's a little piece of an aria from La Fanciulla del West, which is a Puccini I've never heard of, but I'm also not huge on opera in general. I know La Boheme and I know Madama Butterfly.
You're not a Puccini head?
Oh,
No.
I know Tosca. Wow, I know 3 Puccinis. Okay.
So, you can go ahead and press play whenever you want, Molly. It should start from 8:20.
Silently the senses abandon their defenses.
It's also like the same scoring in the background during it too. It's very similar.
Open up your mind, let your fantasy.
So there's a little bit of a reference in, I've talked about this before, the musical of musicals, the musical. They do like an Andrew Lloyd Webber bit, and they make a joke out of this moment where there's like a joke that they play where he's like, the character in the musical has written a musical for the other character, a la Phantom and Christine, and he sings, "It might sound just a teeny like something by Puccini, but no, it's all brand new." So it's very funny. So I just found that very interesting because I did not know any of that about.
It's interesting that I'm sure that this does not have any bearing on the legal case, but it feels different if you're stealing from a totally different genre. Like, Phantom of the Opera is not an opera. If Lloyd Webber were taking from another musical, I would feel on like a moral level more upset about it than him taking from Puccini, because it feels like he's taking Puccini into a new realm somehow.
Yeah, and isn't like him creating opera ish for musical theater, isn't it? Like, I'm referencing the art of opera, and
that's
like,
the thing is, like, what's the difference between referencing and stealing at that point?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, we do like pop music samples all the time now, and I don't know what the like exact like I don't think that people pay rights necessarily to sample music. I don't know.
I think it depends. I think they do. I think they have to.
But that's also more recent too.
Recent. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's interesting. I think it's a little bee to put in your bonnet of, Andrew Lloyd Webber and his just the quirks.
Because didn't Hellas get mad at Beyonce for sampling her?
Yes. But they did. They did end up getting the rights from like the original, like the actual company. And so it was.
That one wasn't. She did sample it correctly, but she was like, but she didn't ask me personally if I could do it. And I was like, well, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's talk about the movie.
It's directed by Joel Schumacher, somebody we have talked about before because he wrote the screenplay for The Wiz. If you remember, we talked about that.
And we support gay artists.
Famously gay. On his Wikipedia page, I feel comfortable saying this because it's on his Wikipedia page, but he boasts that he is so promiscuous that he has slept with, he has passed away, so I will use past tense. He slept with 10,000 to 20,000 men during his lifetime.
Work.
Wow. Okay. How old was he when he died?
It's a great question. Probably in his 70s would be my guess.
Should we say 75? Should we just estimate?
Let's say 75.
Okay. We'll say that he didn't begin until he was 18. Probably not true, but let's just say.
He said he started when he was 11. That was also.
Oh dear.
That was also on the Wikipedia
probably
page.
Wasn't healthy. Okay,
Nope.
So that's 64 years of sexual activity.
There's 365 days in a year.
Times 365.
Okay, so that is 23,360 days.
Okay.
So 20,000 seems like quite ambitious.
Yeah.
Yeah, in context. And also like
maybe he took like a night off here, a night off there,
And also like maybe in his like, prime, it was like there were multiple people at once. So it's not like
I would assume. I would assume as
Let's
much.
say it was 15 was the real number. That's a 64 percentile. 64% of the days of his life he was engaging with a new sexual partner.
Okay.
That's incredible.
That's a lot. I mean, and did he never have any relationship? Are there any years we can account for of being at all monogamous or?
I don't believe so. I didn't see like he's widowed by or anything.
I mean, good for you, Joel Schumacher. Live your life. That's great, and it's impressive. It's
mostly
percentage.
Impressive that he never contracted HIV/AIDS, especially because if he would have started so young.
I'd love to know about his safe sex practices. Doctors should have been getting information from him.
He was a case study. Yeah.
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 Great.
He also did Batman.
He also, so I was going to talk about was Joel Schumacher.
His other gay film.
Joel Schumacher's a very interesting
career. The fact that he had time to do anything else is really what's most impressive about it. Yeah.
He started in like production and costume design, and then he did screenplays, and then he ended up being a director, and he had a bunch of work in the 90s. He took over the Batman franchise from...
These were the Clooney years?
These were the Clooney years, but what is his name? Who directed the first two? Beetlejuice.
Michael Keaton?
Edward Scissorhands. No, the director.
Tim Burton.
Tim Burton. He took over the franchise from Tim Burton.
It is funny that Beetlejuice was your first Tim Burton.
Yeah. Well, what's more Tim Burton? My God. So he took it over, and then it like the first one he did, which I never can remember the specific names of them, but the first one was like it wasn't a critical success, but it was like the most money a Batman film had ever made at that point. So then he did another one, and that was the one I think with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I think that's Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
And that one was like the flop. And then everyone talked about the nipples and the Batman suit.
Which was funny because that was the formative Batman
for any gay man, for sure.
Like it was that movie that was like, oh,
Robin was so hot.
I am looking at Robin.
Who was Robin again?
Robin was Chris O'Donnell.
Yes, Chris O'Donnell.
Who
like really doesn't do anything.
Pulling up a face for me at all.
He's very attractive in that film. Anyway, so he has a very interesting career. That's all I wanted to say.
Silverstone was
Batgirl.
Was Batgirl. Mm-hmm. Uma Thurman was Poison Ivy, very famously iconic. Yeah.
So the screenplay is written by Andrew Lloyd Webber and Joel Schumacher. It's based on everything that I've just talked about. It is produced by Andrew Lloyd Webber. We'll come back to that in a second. It stars Gerard Butler, Emmy Rossum. Oh, Gerard Butler plays the Phantom. Emmy Rossum is Christine Daae. Patrick Wilson plays Raoul, the Vicomte de Chagny. Miranda Richardson plays Mme Giry, and Minnie Driver plays La Carlotta. The cinematography is by John Matheson. It is edited by Terry Rawlings. The production companies are Joel Schumacher Productions, Really Useful Films, which is Andrew Lloyd Webber's company, and Scion Films. It is distributed by a bunch of different people. So in the UK, it was distributed by Entertainment Film Distributors. In the United States, it was distributed by Warner Brothers. And internationally, it was distributed by Odyssey Entertainment. It was released on December 10th, 2004. Its running time is 143 minutes. Its budget was 70 to 80 million, give or take. And the box office was 154.6.
A hit.
Yeah.
Probably
Solid
not a
returns.
hit. Because we never know if the budget includes the marketing budget, which it almost probably never does. It's probably just the production budget. So if they broke even, they came close. That's my guess, based on how much marketing they did for the film, which probably is a lot because this is post Chicago, so everybody thinks they have the new Chicago by just doing a new musical. So, interestingly, Warner Brothers purchased the rights to the film in 1989, and Joel Schumacher is immediately attached to direct because Andrew Lloyd Webber sees his film of The Lost Boys, which is a vampire movie set in SoCal, and loves his use
Kiefer
of
Sutherland.
Kiefer Sutherland, yes.
Oh.
He loves his use of music in the film, so he was like, oh, he really understands. He should direct, which is crazy because he really hadn't done anything that huge at that point. It was supposed to start in the production was supposed to start June of 1990. Then it was pushed to November of 1990. And then there was a delay due to Sarah Brightman and Andrew Lloyd Webber getting a divorce. So that delayed things. And then Schumacher's career took off. So he really didn't have time to do this project. In 2003, Andrew Lloyd Webber's company, which I just said was Really Useful Films, they buy the rights back from the Warner Brothers in order to produce the film independently. But Warner Brothers retained the first look option in order to have access to distribution. So that's how that.
What is that? Do we know what first look means?
It just means that they got the first cut of the film to see if they wanted to buy in to do the distributing. Or if not, they could pass, and then they would go to every other studio, basically.
So,
cool.
So is this... It's independent in the sense that it was independently produced.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Almost like this is a weird way to think about it, but almost like how the prequels for Star Wars were independently produced by George Lucas. They were not done through 20th Century Fox. So casting. So obviously it was originally in 1990 supposed to be Michael Crawford. With the times, as the time kept being pushed along, there was Hugh Jackman, John Travolta, Antonio Banderas, Meatloaf, Heath Ledger, and Matthew McConaughey were all considered at various points along the line. I would say a Heath Ledger would be fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, those first three names, at least we know that they can, like, sing.
Yeah.
John Travolta sing. I mean, more than Gerard Butler.
Gerard Butler.
Like
Gerard Butler.
Yeah.
At least they've proven that they can sing.
Yeah. So Christine originally obviously was supposed to be Sarah Brightman. And then during the course, Katie Holmes, Anne Hathaway, and Keira Knightley are all considered as well.
Is this current Tom Cruise Katie Holmes, 2004?
Yeah.
I believe you determined in the previous recording that it was pre-Tom Cruise.
It was. Well, because okay.
Are you? I don't know what you're asking. Then
No, I'm saying the last episode.
The last time
of
we did
Showgays
it
on Phantom of the Opera. In that episode,
I
you
said pre-Tom Cruise.
That this film was filmed before Katie Holmes got with Tom Cruise.
Oh,
because I was gonna say, because I didn't know if this was Katie Holmes coming in with the energy of like, I love Christy, I would love to be a part of this project, or is it like when she was trying to gun for 9 and she's like, I know what it's like to be this wife character.
What was Katie Holmes' big thing?
She was Dawson's Creek.
Dawson's Creek,
which I believe was still happening in 2004.
Dawson's Creek, it had to have just been like star power, and I'm sure she's probably a singer because Andrew Lloyd Webber
started
was like,
dating Tom Cruise in April of 2005.
Okay,
wow, so yeah,
interesting.
I mean, Anne Hathaway could absolutely sing it, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
I would have loved Keira Knightley because I have a huge crush on Keira Knightley, but I don't know if she could sing it at all. But I will say, so Purely Abby Rossum was 17 when they filmed it?
Yeah.
When they started filming, she was 16.
Oof.
Yikes.
Which means she probably auditioned at 15, is my guess.
Yeah. So that's a yikes from me personally. But I do like the fact that she is so young because I think that makes this character make more sense. Something that I'm sure is going to make those who know Phantom through soundtracks very angry is that I, having known the film first, am often off-put by how like mature and full sounding the stage Christines are. They always sound like 35-year-old women, and I feel like the character is supposed to be late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in this one too, especially like her contrast with Carlotta is so extreme that it like helps the story narratively in terms of like why everyone was like, whoa, this voice. So yeah, that's it's very interesting that she was extremely young. And Joel Schumacher allegedly only wanted actresses under 25. So
under 25 is fine.
Yeah.
Over 18, there should have been a floor as well as a ceiling.
Over 18.
Yeah.
Over 18 should definitely be the floor.
Yeah.
Because even if you had cast like a Katie Holmes or an Anne Hathaway, I mean, Anne Hathaway's first big breakout role, she was a high schooler. So it's like, you could have cast someone like late teens, early 20s that would still easily read off as super young.
So, it was shot on 8 different sound stages at Pinewood Studios, so it was all built like for this movie, basically, which is very impressive because the art direction is very, very impressive in my opinion.
Strong.
And they actually did burn the theater set down for at the end for the fire.
More practical stuff for movies.
More fires.
More real fires, please.
More fire. Chandelier cost $1.3 million, and it was provided by Swarovski. And I remember watching the movie, and there's a point where like present day Raoul is looking at like 2 lovers look at a Swarovski window, and I was like, what a weird moment this is in this movie. And now it makes sense because I was probably like, you have to put our name somewhere in this movie.
That was product placement.
Yeah. Yeah, it was weird. So at the Oscars, this movie did not receive a ton of love. It was nominated for a few, though. So it was nominated for Best Original Song for the credit song Learn to Be Lonely.
Back when the credit songs were eligible.
Allowed, yeah. It was nominated for Best Cinematography and Best Art Direction, but did not win any of them. The week this comes out in the theaters, here is the box office lineup. In 10th place, Phantom of the Opera. Number 9, The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. Zissou. 8 is Spanglish. 7 is Darkness. I don't know that one. That's the first one I don't know. 6 is Polar Express. 5 is Ocean's 12. 4 is The Aviator. 3 is Fat Albert.
Yes.
2 is A Series of Unfortunate Events. And 1 is Meet the Fockers. Just to put us in a point in time.
Time and place. I loved Series of Unfortunate Events books. I did not like the movie initially, but then my parents got it for me for Christmas. So I watched it like several times over because I owned it, and I came to really love the movie.
Yeah. Meryl Streep.
Jim Carrey. Neil Patrick Harris is in the remake.
Jim Carrey. Pasta
the other person.
I don't remember who the second one is. Because it's the
Uncle
first
Monty.
3 books.
He's an English actor.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay, the last thing I want to tell you, and then I swear to God we can talk about this movie, is I have to tell you about the plot of Love Never Dies.
Absolutely.
Because we're never going to do it.
We're never.
They're not going to make a movie of it.
And they better not.
I can guarantee they will never make a movie of this. So Love Never Dies is the sequel to Phantom of the Opera that debuted on the West End in 2010, and it was so poorly received that it never even had a Broadway debut.
It has had runs in other cities, though, because they want to make this happen so badly.
Yes, it did have an Australian run where they retooled the script a little bit to a bit more generous acclaim. So the music is Andrew Lloyd Webber. Lyrics are by Glenn Slater. So different person from Phantom of the Opera. They were like, we're not going back to the same well of knowledge. Here is the quick summary that I have written. It is 10 years since the events of the original story in Phantom of the Opera. Christine, with Raoul and son Gustav, they are invited to Phantasma on Coney Island. So this takes place in New York. It is run by the Phantom, who has been aided by Mme Giry and Meg, who apparently now performs sexual favors to help the Phantom realize his vision of a theme park. I don't know. Christine hasn't sung in ages. Raoul is a drunk and a gambler. Things are on the rocks. This is a fun summary. The Phantom reveals himself to Christine alone when she's there. They reminisce about a wonderful night they had together, allegedly. And Christine was going to choose him over Raoul, but when she woke up, she reveals that he was gone. And he was like, oh, I left because I was so scared you would be afraid of my face. So I fled. And she was like, well, then I chose Raoul because of that. So
that's very much not what happened, but okay.
This is all like off stage or something.
But it's not, yeah.
In a later scene, the Phantom bets Raoul that because Raoul can't, he's a gambler.
Mm-hmm.
The Phantom bets Raoul that if Christine won't perform the aria that the Phantom has written, then the Phantom will pay off all their debts and allow them to leave together. But if she does sing the aria, Raoul must leave Christine for good. And he agrees, which seems crazy. She is, of course, swept up by his soaring aria and performs, Raoul accepting defeat and leaves. Meanwhile, Meg has lost her fucking mind, and the Girys have become full villains of this story. She's frustrated at the realization that the Phantom will choose Christine yet again. She is so upset she kidnaps Gustav, who has been revealed to be the Phantom's actual child at this point, and is going to drown him in the ocean. They rush to the dock, the Phantom apologizing for not realizing Meg's contributions, while Meg is brandishing a gun at him. However, upon mentioning Christine, Meg becomes enraged and shoots the gun, mistakenly shooting Christine and killing her. The Phantom and Christine share a kiss as she dies in his arms. Gustav slowly unmasks the Phantom without fear. Curtain.
This is giving me Harry Potter fan fiction.
It's giving
vibes.
Fan fiction. It's total fan fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, it apparently wasn't good, and it wasn't even bad enough that it was like fun to see it because it was bad either. It was just like
sad bad.
Here's my question: why not do a prequel? If you need more Phantom content.
If you need more Phantom.
Well, because a sequel had already been written in the form of a book. So there, in 1999, some writer had been like, "It's my job to write a sequel to the Phantom of the Opera." From 1911.
Oh.
And so writes The Phantom of Manhattan, and that is what this is based on.
So Lloyd Webber read that and was like, yes.
I should say inspired by, because I'm sure it's a lot more different, but yeah.
Wow.
There you go. That's Love Never Dies. We're never doing it on the pod, so there you go. All right, we must move on. Molly, what are your general thoughts on this movie?
I think it's good. I think it's a good movie.
I do too.
I think that it is visually great, and I don't think Gerard Butler is bad in it. I don't think he's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying he has a great voice,
Mm-hmm.
but even though it's a very operatic and like musically based movie, it doesn't bother me that the voices aren't amazing in it. I think that they hit the right balance of like enough musicality to keep it going. And you know, I've seen the criticisms. I understand the criticisms, but they can't get under my skin enough to make me dislike the movie.
Yeah.
I just love it. Minnie Driver is truly everything.
Oh, come on.
Minnie Driver is one of those actresses that has a career that like I in my head have a fantasy that like if I became an actress, that would be like the type of career that I would have had. I don't know, it's just good. It's just a good movie.
Yeah. I wouldn't say so I would say it's good. I definitely really like it. I understand obviously the criticisms of it. I think there's some weird criticisms that I'll read later when we get to the end, but for the most part, I don't mind Gerard Butler. I would say it's only Music of the Night where I'm like, this probably should be a little bit better, honestly. Yeah. But that's really everything else I'm like pretty fine with.
I also, this is maybe a hot take, that I think that some of the criticism of Gerard Butler in this movie is like boys who want him to be their 300 daddy and like don't want to square the circle of like he was in Phantom of the Opera and he's also this big action star. Like, let him live. Let him be a multifaceted person who is also the Phantom of the Opera.
Which is so weird because I feel like Hugh Jackman was able to do it. Like, I feel like he gets more respected as like he does musicals. He's the boy from Oz, but then also is Wolverine, and that's okay for some reason.
Well, yeah, but that's, I mean, he didn't really do a musical until, he didn't do a movie musical, I should say, until Les Mis, which is 2012.
Yeah. I think also Wolverine is less fascist than 300 is.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, it's true. That is true.
That is true.
RJ, general thoughts?
I will say, like, when I was in our first version of this podcast of this movie, because at the time we were just basically like going plot by plot, like beat by beat, we were a lot more harsh on it and more just like negative. I don't think like we both were like, did we like this or not? Like we just kept kind of like trying to just like tear it down. So it makes me believe that like truly my big faults of Phantom are just like more so in the actual source material. But then like I was watching it, I was like, watching it last night, I was like, this is a fully realized vision. Like this is Joel Schumacher being like, we are accepting how melodramatic this gothic romance is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna film it that way. I'm gonna present it that way.
Yeah.
I don't think you can say that they were unclear on what they were trying to do. Like, maybe they were taking it a hair too seriously. Like, I get that, like, and that's part of why Minnie Driver's so great in it, is that she's like not taking it so seriously.
She's the only person having fun in this movie.
Yeah.
But, and I also, from my understanding of the criticism and the difference between the stage musical, I do see the point of like the Phantom should maybe be less like on screen, that he should be more of this like mysterious presence, only there through his voice, and you maybe question more like, is Christine kind of hallucinating some of this? I get all of that. I just think that like, I get that it's like busy and a lot, but I like that about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because isn't that what you come to expect anyway from like, it's what you would want. It's what you would expect from it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I think there were moments in the movie where like, okay, yes, the glove of him locking her in to make it look like there is a like killer on the loose, like that kind of situation. Where I feel like it does jump a little bit of like, this is a different movie, and then later on it's a different movie. So I feel like that's my only criticism, that like in some aspects it feels like disjointed in that way, but because there is this like framing device of like this is all in the past, and like the actual present is that it's the Vicomte like kind of remembering this traumatic experience. There is a little bit of like, okay, there's something that's kind of holding it together. So like there is a visual language. I don't think I personally didn't like that visual language because it was like, why does the present look older than the past?
Yeah.
That was my biggest thing. I'm like, you're putting so much grainy shit on what is supposed to be the present, and then like the flashbacks are crystal clear. But overall, and I also think maybe because we've watched a lot more melodramas now, like that I'm like, oh, I'm ready to be swept away in something that is completely just like a sweeping romance or like a sweeping story that I'm like, I don't need this to be like fucking like, you know, like realism or whatever.
And also
or like slice of life. Like it's not.
As I said 2 episodes ago, it's 2023. We're resolving that we are going to critique media based on what the media is attempting to do.
To present itself.
Not what we think the media should be attempting to do.
Yeah.
So in this regard, I would say a lot of the criticism that I read, and I'll talk about it later, but I think a lot of the criticism too
is doing that.
It's the thing of like, it's a musical released during award season. So like, we're going to evaluate it based on like, should it win the Oscar for Best Picture? Okay. Which I don't know. I'm sure that was like an idea that they had that it should be eligible. But like, if you separate that out, I think it's like perfectly fine. I wouldn't say it's a piece of cinematic triumph.
Yeah, like I didn't really get big like this was an awards grab. Like we made this so that it can sweep or pick up stuff.
Certainly
like,
not in the way that like Les Mis felt that way.
Yes,
sure,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm like, oh, this feels more just like let's do Phantom.
Yeah,
and I think that like. I feel like a critique is like, oh, it's trying to be too realistic because it's in like the post 9/11, everything has to be gritty realism thing. But I think it's trying to be sincere in the way that melodrama is sincere more than it's trying to be realistic in a gritty realism type of way.
It's also,
like,
it's also like a piece of 80s. It's an 80s time machine, basically, told through a story from 1911. And like, the 80s inherently were so earnest. It was so sincere in all of its like everything was like there was no cynicism in 80s media. Like it was all
we
like
hadn't invented
we have Reagan. It's the golden age of hair being 10 feet tall. Like we things have never been better. And so I feel like looking at it from like again probably the post 9/11 like the world is crumbling around us. We're being attacked from all sides. How can people just enjoy this stupid romance, which is it is stupid, but like that's the fun of it. That's why it's there.
Yeah.
I kind of so we had discussed that we want to go beat by beat through this movie, and I kind of don't even want to do that now. I kind of just want to talk around the film, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
So I want to discuss. I do want to talk about the love triangle. Because I think that's obviously the glue holding this whole piece together. And I think it's fascinating. I think there is a fascinating element about Phantom of the Opera and its relationship to Andrew Lloyd Webber as a person who is a composer.
Can say Mary Sue. You can say her name.
Who is married to the star of the musical. Who then wrote a sequel in which the Phantom is vindicated and Christine is shot to death. I just think there's like something there.
Yeah.
Wait, but weren't they? So they weren't divorced when he wrote it. They were together when he wrote it.
They were together when he wrote it. But she also can't end up with she can't end up with the Phantom. This is why Love Never Dies sucks. Idea. He has killed people.
Yeah.
I don't even in the book. It's alluded to the fact that he kills people, but everyone in the book, they don't die by his hands, pretty much. All the deaths that happen in the book, they happen by, like, them killing themselves because they end up in his torture chamber. And so they, like commit suicide because it's so crazy.
Oh. Or, like, they get...
Yeah, that's pretty cruelty related to just killing people.
It's like, I'm not saying it's great. I'm saying in the musical... He like is literally
he kills them.
He is killing them with his own hands.
In the book, it's like he's setting traps, basically.
Right. And I think it's like fascinating that they even went further away from like, well, it's like morally more gray, or it's not gray, obviously in the book, but like they went to a more hard line, like this man has killed people, and yet this is the version where they're like, but also
he's a lover.
He writes good music. What are you gonna do?
He's very talented.
I absolutely love that one part of his character is that he's a great architect and that he's lived inside of the same building since he was like 11 years old. And I'm just like, how many buildings have you seen? It's like a question that I have.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I guess he's like designing stuff inside in the sense of like booby traps and caves and stuff. I think that
he's a genius.
I mean, he is a groomer. Like he started.
He literally.
Well,
absolutely.
This girl singing lessons when she was like 7, and I'm sure that he didn't like wait to fall in love with her until she was of age. Since Emmy Rossum's not even of age by the time they filmed this. So that's uncomfortable. But if we take that part out of it for the sake of argument, the core idea, right, is like, do you go with the guy who's like light and good, but maybe a little bit boring?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you go for the guy who's like dangerous and passionate and, you know, you like can't explain fire into him?
We literally just finished watching a dating show, and the last girl, this was literally her predicament.
This was the storyline the whole season.
Of her picking the guy who's been in love with her the entire show.
And Viz very sweet.
And is very sweet.
Very attentive.
Like, very, very attentive, very sensitive. Or this like ex-Navy SEAL that just comes in and completely wrecks her. Like just changes her.
He doesn't treat her like she's never been treated before.
Yes. So she's fully just like, this is so exciting and new because he
doesn't dote on her very specifically.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, wow. This is the story that will always, it never ends.
I mean, I was going to say it's very like Twilight.
It is very like Twilight. It's true.
But in Twilight, she picks the dangerous, exciting guy.
The bad boy.
Yeah.
And not the guy that makes me feel safe and warm and et cetera, et cetera.
Even though they're both technically dangerous.
Was Jacob always in the stories? He comes
he's like a minor character in the first. I did read Twilight when I was like 15.
I did too.
It
got me
we
through
all
something.
did. Let's all not pretend we didn't read Twilight. He's like a minorish character in the first book, and he's the whole thing about like, and then he like comes into the second book and he's kind of grown up and he's like gotten buff is like true to the books as well.
Yeah. He's also named after the writer's brother.
Arizona.
Anyway,
but I think it's more like she wrote him in the first one and did not anticipate there being a
what
love
she was going to end up
triangle
doing with that character. Yeah. But when like Bella describes them, like Jacob is like warm and like makes her feel like he's like the sun. It's like this very comforting descriptions of like her feelings when around him, whereas Edward is like cold and like he's not really dangerous. Like there's never really an implication that he would hurt her. But then there's the whole like blood-sucking. I guess that there is. I guess there's like a tension.
I guess
like,
being a vampire.
He has to. No. I mean, like he has to like choose to hold back on.
Oh yeah.
Consuming her blood is, I guess, actually a very central part of the whole thing. But like he doesn't like. But he's not like threatening her. Is what I'm trying to say. Like the Phantom is like. Phantom is like. I'm
an existential threat as opposed to the Phantom who's like.
Not, yeah.
It's an actual act of violence.
Trying to, yeah.
And even like fully like when she first tore her mask off, he was fully like, "Oh, you fucking
he throws her to the ground."
Yeah.
He does the like straight white man punches through a wall thing.
Very much that energy. I would like to know if Stephanie Myers is a Phantom of the Opera fan.
Has to be. Has to be.
But I also think it's like a very well-worn trope, right? And I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of like there are loves that are like passionate but also sort of maybe dangerous, and like it's not something that you should choose for as a long-term relationship situation. So something I like about Phantom is that she does end up with Raoul.
Especially in like young adult stuff, I feel like young adult romance, there's always like there's the boy who likes you, and then there's the boy who you maybe shouldn't introduce to your parents.
Right.
It's very that energy.
Because sometimes your parents are dead and you think that the boy is your dad. Is that part of it?
Is totally the ghost of your dad?
I like forgot that happened until rewatching this one. I was like, oh, she thought that it's him. It's my dad / it's the angel that my dad sent. Like it's the line between her dad and the angel of music is a little bit fuzzy.
And here's a little bit of Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again.
Oh.
Wishing you were somehow here again. Wishing you were somehow near. Sometimes it seemed if I just dreamed, somehow you would be here. Wishing I could hear your voice again, knowing that I never would. Dreaming of you won't help me to do all that you do.
Who would you pick? RJ, who would you pick?
Raul, because he's rich.
Yeah.
He owns the theater, girl. Oh,
Well, let's say the Phantom
financier.
Let's say the Phantom didn't murder anybody.
Didn't murder anybody. Okay.
So he is just like
He's just like-
Quasimodo.
He just groomed me and lives in a cave. This is the
Right.
only,
Right. So nothing bad,
only
right?
thing.
Yeah. No crime.
I
Molly.
mean, it's 2023. You have little flings with the Phantom, and then you get together with Raul. That's the real answer,
Yeah.
right?
I'm saying Raul seems like such like a little baby that I think you could honestly get away with being like, Raul, I'm really only looking for a polyamorous relationship. So take it or leave it. And he'd probably be like, okay.
Or fully lie to Raul and be like, I do have to live in the opera house.
No, this is unfair to Raul. I won't stand for this. I don't
No, I'm
think that
picking
he
Raul. I'm
deserves
still
that.
picking Raul.
I just
Yeah.
think like you don't pick the Phantom for the long term, but I
Yes.
see the appeal for the short term.
Sure.
Yeah, you pick Raul. It's
Yeah.
silly to even.
It's crazy too, because
even
like
if he's not a groomer or a murderer, like
'cause
still not
Raul-
the right choice.
also already had like the history. They were childhood friends or crushes. Like they already
Childhood sweethearts. Yeah.
Yes. So
I do, however, love in the masquerade scene with the engagement, the secret engagement,
Mhm.
that she's like, ooh, like we're gonna have the secret engagement. And he's like, yeah, but like, why is it a secret engagement? I don't understand. And I get that the implication is like she's worried about the Phantom, but she doesn't want to say that.
Mhm.
But I'm like, girl, he is fully your boss. Yeah, of course you're not going to want to tell. There's like an earlier thing in the Prima Donna song where they're like, well, obviously she slept with a patron and that's why she's getting the lead role. I was like, this undercuts you professionally.
Yeah.
He is exercising his power over you. Like it is not a good look to be the up and coming star of the opera and get engaged,
At the same year.
the patron of the opera. Everybody's going to assume that that's why you're getting your roles. And, you know, it made me think of Singing in the Rain. I was like, really, you can see the influence of Singing in the Rain, because the one thing that bothers me about that movie is that Donna, is it Kathy? Is that her character's name?
Mm-hmm.
That they like get together in the end and they're also in a movie together. And I'm like, but wouldn't no one ever take her seriously? Because like she got engaged to the biggest movie star of all time. And so like, of course he's going to put her in his movies. You know what I mean?
So I think that one though is different because
They saw
two
her
actors I feel different to me than like a producer.
See, I
Or a
think it's
director.
worse publicity wise because the
I don't know, 'cause
public will
I
be
think-
more aware of it.
But I also think that if the public likes two people together, then they would be like, oh, it's a real life romance.
If I'm trying to think about like an older famous actor who also isn't maybe like kind of problematic.
There's none.
Well, because
Good
I was going to
luck.
say Brad Pitt, but like
Well,
not unpopular, not thought of well right now. George Clooney obviously like has a wife, and everyone would be really mad if he broke up with her.
Because she's literally saving the world.
yeah, she's a UN person. I'm telling you, Molly, there's nobody that's not
Gerard
problematic.
Butler, if Gerard Butler,
He's on the top of everyone's mind.
he's not okay, but let's say he was like a little more famous than he is, because he's famous, but he's not like total A-list, right? Gerard Butler
Olympus has fallen.
started dating, let's not even say like crazy young, or no, let's say Leonardo DiCaprio. Let's
Yes,
say Leonardo
there you go.
DiCaprio
Okay.
got together with, and let's say she's 25 years old and everyone's like, oh my God, congratulations, Leo, you did it.
Yeah.
So he's dating an up and coming actress who's age appropriate. We'll take out that factor. And then all of a sudden,
she gets cast.
She's in a major movie opposite Leonardo DiCaprio and has not had a career up to that point. I don't think anyone would be like, wow, I guess she really deserves that part in that movie.
Oh, sure. But I don't think anyone would be mad at her. I feel like people would be like, secure the bag. But it's also 2023.
It's in new lens now.
In 1870 in an opera house, absolutely. Yeah. I agree with what you're saying.
We have a different relationship now to women's social climbing. We tend to cheer it on. Yeah. But I think at the time, it would not be looked upon well.
If all of a sudden Leonardo DiCaprio starts dating Sugar or Spice, and then all of a sudden Sugar or Spice become like, it becomes Sugar's Drag Race.
This is such an opaque reference for my mom. If these are queens on the new season of Drag Race who are, I'm going to say 21 years old.
Yes. And like prior like drag performing.
Yeah. I mean, I think if Leonardo DiCaprio started dating them, there'd be a lot more to talk about than just
than just the social climbing aspect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, work. I'd be excited, but
I mean, I agree with what you're saying in that like Christine may also be thinking about that entire aspect.
Like her future.
But like I don't even know what the point of the story was. Let's listen to a little bit of Masquerade, the scene in which we're talking about.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about Masquerade
is how I always sing it as Poppin' Pussies on Parade.
Okay. And also how they're like the colors of the masquerade. Like there's colors referenced in the lyrics, and this production was like, it's black and white, girls.
It's black and white.
It's black and white and gold and silver.
They talk about colors, and they talk about like specific costumes of like people are dressed as things, and they're all just in like generic patterns and masks. It's like, look at that lion over there, and it's all just like black masks. Like I don't know why there was such a disconnect between the lyrics and the costumes, but the costumes do slay.
The costumes in this movie are so good. I also feel like it's a bit of like, what's the thing where you're like asking for it? Maybe it's just asking for it.
Yeah, it's called asking for it.
In the terms of like,
in the terms that they're about to sing a song called Masquerade, and the villain is
a masquerade person. I feel like you're asking for him to come to the event, show up to the function.
Exactly. I see where you're going. Yeah, there is a word for that, but it's escaping me right now.
It's like oh shoot, yeah, it's like
speaking the devil's name or something like that.
Yeah, it's like writing your own,
speaking into fruition.
Yeah, something like that.
Speaking into fruition,
you're
or like
manifesting
self-fulfilling
prophecy.
Yes, 100%
prophecy.
For sure. They are courting disaster with this whole concept. I also love how like they start the scene with like the producers and Minnie Driver being like, do you know what's great about this party is the Phantom is straight up not coming? And I'm like, on what evidence?
What the fuck are you talking about? You don't know him.
He's left, or he's done, or he's like afraid of the masquerade. Like there's no reason to
he's so scared of masks.
Like,
what we know about the Phantom
is masks. Yeah, he hates masks.
It's also he hates masks. So we'll be
in the
good.
Stage adaptation.
One thing about me is I
hate masks.
So in the stage adaptation, it is clear that Act 1 and Act 2 are separated by 6 months. They like make that explicit.
Okay.
I think that's what they tried to do.
6 months of time where the Phantom has not done anything. So they're like, he's done. Mama, he's old news.
I think this was...
And on a 24-hour cable news cycle, it might as well be decades ago.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you a single thing that happened 6 months ago.
No.
To me or to anyone else.
In this version, they sing to each other on the roof, and it's snowy, and then the masquerade ball is essentially New Year's, is what they allude to. And it also still seems to be winter. So, it's been like 2 weeks maybe, and there's been nothing going on, so they're like, he's gone! We're good! We're in the clear!
Yeah.
I mean, just the timeline of events in this musical doesn't make sense because, like, how are they doing Hannibal and then the next day they're doing a new opera? I don't think that's how it's in Summer Stock.
Yeah.
It's the famous Summer.
Famous opera summer
Opera
stock.
populaire summer stock. Okay, now we have to talk about accents.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
it's the
do.
best. It's the best.
Because this is part of the charm I find at this movie
opera populaire.
is like you have most of the cast is doing a British accent. Oh,
Because a fair chunk are British.
yeah. So the Phantom's British. Is Emmy doing a British accent, or is she just whispering the
she's
whole movie?
whispering the entire time. That was also a big bit in our first episode. We kept being
Yeah,
like
that's funny that you can't tell the difference between those two.
Raoul is
whispering in the British accent.
Raoul is fully doing an American accent.
Yeah.
Like he's just
yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
Miranda Richardson as Mme Giry is
French.
truly French in like
Yeah.
almost like in an offensive way. But her daughter is like British.
Yeah, that's the one that I really can't understand. Is like,
then-
so her mom is French,
Yeah.
and then she was raised as like essentially an adopted sister to Christine, who is Swedish.
Oh,
Her
yes.
father is a famed Swedish player.
Violinist.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe was raised in France. But it's like, why in this family is the mother French, one daughter is British, and one daughter is American?
Yeah.
I can't explain it.
No, it's not.
And I wonder
And then Minnie Driver is Italian.
an offensive Italian
Yeah.
accent.
In-
Yeah, I mean, but she's at least supposed to be an Italian character. That one at least makes
Yes.
sense.
In our tribute to offensive Italian stereotypes this year, the same year we do 9.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
She's
Oh,
added to
I'll
the
take this
ranks.
one over 9 any day of the week.
I smell a showy award. Showy
Oh,
contender.
yeah, good category.
Mm. It does
Greatest
feel
Italian
like
parody.
it does feel like an attempt to be like, what's melodramatic in a romance back in this day? Everyone speaks like fancy. So let's just make everyone sound like
I think it feels like everyone got asked, like, what's an accident? What's an accident? What's an accent you feel confident in doing? Go with that one.
stick with it. Yeah. Play to your strengths. Joel
Play
said
to your
play to your
strengths.
strengths.
Don't
None.
worry about the world. Don't worry
Don't
about
worry
what
about the
everyone else is
world.
doing. Just
we
do
got
it.
it.
Just do what feels good for you.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
fix it. You know,
Yeah.
you already look the way you look. We already built the damn opera.
Right.
But look, we
Else.
have to stop and talk about how Patrick Wilson is awesome in this movie.
Oh,
Because
So
yes,
good.
you
and I
have-
hate what his career is now.
You have spoken ill of this character in multiple ways, and we have
I
to
know.
be clear
Yeah,
that
I know.
he
He is so
absolutely
good in this
slays.
He is not the problem at all.
I would
he
say
is so
he's-
great.
I would say he's not the most interesting part of this movie, but also like Raoul is not the most interesting character.
I think he
either.
took a fundamentally uninteresting character and made him not interesting, but like a
To be
character
clear.
that I root for.
Yes.
Sure.
I
Very
care
relatable-
about him.
Very chivalrous. Very.
They
like,
also give him more to do in this than in the stage version because they throw
Yeah.
him into these like he does the sword fight, he has the like underwater sequence, he has the
And he
like
does like they like literally like in the cemetery scene, Phantom is in all black and he rides out on like a white horse, white shirt. They're like melodrama, dark and light, like no
Yes, yes, yes.
complications, good guy, bad guy.
yeah.
And I love that. And yeah, I think I agree. Like he should have a way better career than I think he's had.
You know what's great
because
about this
he's
movie
great.
in our this season we're talking about media literacy every episode. You need no media literacy to understand this film.
If you understand a picture book, you should be
Yeah.
able to catch this one on.
The attraction between Christina and the Phantom takes a little bit of like listening to the lyrics. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of understanding sort of like the side everyone is on, I will also say I think the opening scene is a little bit confused. Not the framing device, but like the first scene in 1870. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. There's a
lot
People are
going on.
kind of just chatting around the stage. It feels a little like just that scene feels like they assume I've seen the stage musical and they're trying to just like remind me of what happens
Yes,
instead
yes,
of
yes.
establishing what happens. Which is funny
Very
because the
Zombies
rest of it
3.
doesn't feel that way. Very ZOMBIS.
Yes.
I think I misspell that every time.
ZOMBBZ.
ZOMBZSLU 3. No, opposite of Zombies 3 because Zombies 3
Zombies
is
4 should be Zombies
absolutely
U.
great. Yes.
Adam.
Okay, sorry. We just released that
Anyway,
episode, so that's why I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I think Zombies 3 is a great example of not doing this, of fully clearly establishing your exposition. I think they could have done a better job with it in this movie.
Do we like this framing device? I already said that I didn't, but
I think it's so interesting that you didn't because you always
I
love a
lo-
framing device.
as someone who loves to put a framing device on something,
I'll
Yeah.
tell you what it's in the movie. It's I wouldn't even say, actually that's not true. Hold on. There's a prologue in the stage version, but they
it's
never
is it the auction?
it's the auction.
Yeah.
Okay.
They never return to it. And it's truly just to set up the overture where the chandelier goes up into the sky. That's the whole point.
Because it starts with it already wrecked.
Mm-hmm.
So as I understand, again, from watching Lindsay Ellis, the purpose of it is the prologue is just to set up the chandelier and have stage effect with it.
Mm-hmm.
Where I agree with her criticism of it is, why does Raoul care about this monkey? Because the monkey is a thing that matters to the Phantom. And then Christine sees, and it gains significance for her and sort of like maybe understanding the Phantom a little bit better. But like, truly, why would Raoul care about it? Like, it does not seem like something he should feel motivated to get.
Right.
But where I disagree, I didn't need the like continuing to go back to it portions, but I did actually like that we go to it at the end, because Ella says like, well, it's like a perfect ending in the musical. It's like, here's what's happened. Meg finds the mask, end of musical. And I think that would have been a little bit sudden for a film.
Yeah.
And I like that we see the rose at the end that tells us the Phantom has been watching from afar throughout Christine's life, because it tells us that he respected the fact that she left, because Raoul is surprised to see it, which means that the Phantom hasn't been like noticeably stalking them this whole time or anything that would indicate like, I think you maybe would be left with a question of like, did he keep that promise otherwise? Yeah. And I like that we know that he never stopped loving Christine. His love is toxic, but like he never stopped loving her. But he did love her from afar.
Yeah, like learned his lesson and like respected a boundary and a choice that she made.
First time in his life.
Important.
It's a musical about him learning boundaries, and that's beautiful.
Yes. I agree that I didn't like going back into it, but I could tell that they were like, we have this already. Let's just keep using it in order to like distinctly like, now we are in a new time. Like,
okay, so this is what you're talking about is my problem with it. So the flashbacks, I like the framing device. I don't like when we just go back to it in the middle of the film, because none of them are interesting enough in showing me anything. Yeah. It's just like a way for him to be looking somewhere. They show Swarovski crystal. They zoom in on one feature that morphs into an image that looks like something from the past to get us back into the story. And I'm like, you could have just taken us into the story.
At one point, he's in a car and he just like looks at a deer that's running, and I'm like, is that supposed to mean something? Like,
what is
a metaphor? But for what? I was wondering if it's even deer? Like, is it a thing in the book or something? Because I mean, I also thought that about the framing device, that I was like, if this is iconic, everyone knows it starts this way for the musical. I feel like there are things you have to put in the movie when they're an iconic part of the musical, because everybody's waiting for them.
So and I thought this deer was like, there's gotta be.
No, I meant that starting at the auction was probably something they sort of felt compelled to include. Because like another thing Lindsay Ellis complains about is like the candles rising from the lake, that she was like, in the stage show, I think that's just like, that's how they're transitioning from place to place. Yeah. But they put it in the movie, which it's like kind of a wild, like, wait, they're like literally candles that come out of the lake. But I think people would miss it if it weren't in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I like the overture. I like it really for that like grand reveal of the chandelier, and I think that whole overture sequence is done really well in like all of the music of the organ, which is like iconic, plus the chandelier rising and the color returning to the screen, I think is like sets the mood so well that like none of the other times we jump out back to the present to like for transitional purposes feel as like good. I also agree that the end works for me too, and having the like gravestone sequence, and I guess everything else is just a setup that he's going there. Yeah, but I would have understood that from just watching the film. So I don't know. I just, that's the only thing that doesn't work for me. Other than that, I like the framing device.
Because I feel like you can't cut the overture. So I also like, if we cut the framing device entirely, like what would that be over? Would it just be like title card, this is Phantom of the Opera, and we listen to the whole overture, you know? Yeah.
And of the overtures that we have talked many a time about on this podcast, I would say like this is one that's like, it is such a mood piece set up, like just the sound of that organ being like, bah, 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 bah. Like it's such like a, this is the Phantom of the Opera. You're doing the thing. You're here. Sit down, grab your popcorn. Yeah.
Well, should we listen to the Phantom of the Opera now? Since we talked about that.
Yeah, might as well.
And here's Pink Floyd's
Echoes.
In sleep he sang to me, in dreams he came.
The reference to the arms holding the torches, which I remember the first time I watched this movie and being so freaked out by these arms, is like a reference to the first Beauty and the Beast film. They have this in there.
Jacques Cocteau, I think it's the
yeah. That version. I've never seen it, so I didn't know, but I saw that in the notes today, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. What an interesting reference.
Yeah. I like the whole taking her down to the cave sort of like sequence, and the magical realism of all of it, I think works well.
Yeah, I kind of wish we had lived in this. There's like a dream state at the beginning of the song that I kind of wish
Yes, this like visual effect
happened the whole time.
Yeah.
It's
Very
like when she's
hazy.
walking through the haze, and then when they're walking through the torch arms.
She literally walks through her mirror.
But
like
then,
this.
yes.
Right.
But then once we get to, I think, the horse is when we kind of lose it. And it's like, okay, now she's on a horse.
Yeah, I guess we could have maybe used a little bit more, not that this movie needed to be more like Chicago, but like a little bit more like a clear visual cue of when Christine starts to kind of fall under the phantom spell. And maybe we could have pulled back some of the opulence of the sort of like above world view, so that then when she is like taken away by the phantom, when she's in the cave with him, like all that stuff could seem a little bit more heightened to let us know like this is all from her perspective of like seeing things in a different way than maybe they really are, and that would have been an interesting thing to play with. Yeah,
that would be interesting, especially if like later on when Giry takes Raoul down and then like they parallel through the same kind of hallways.
Well, we see that a little bit with Meg. Meg like goes behind the mirror and sees just the hallway with the
torches,
but there's no torches. Yeah. So we get just like this little hint of that, but it'd be interesting to see more of that.
Yeah.
I like to first of all, Emmy Rossum is giving you big eyes. She's giving you big, sad, open eyeballs the whole movie.
So much hair. We were talking about how much hair she
do you think it's a wig? What do you think?
I think it has to be.
Has to be, right?
Yeah.
It's so much, just the amount.
It's so
of hair.
curled too. I feel like real hair doesn't hold a curl that well usually.
Well, I saw
like that voluminous of ringlets at that length. The length and the ringlets that does it.
I saw a TikTok today that she dries her hair by putting it in a pasta strainer and then drying it from there to keep her curls intact. I was like, oh.
This was a TikTok by Emmy Rossum or just by a girl who has curly hair?
No, it's just a girl who has curly. It's a girl who has curly hair. She was
talking about this.
It works better than using her diffuser that came with her hair dryer. Is like putting her hair into a colander and then drying
I mean, curly hair is back in. There's a lot of stuff online about trying to get your hair curlier.
Yeah,
I just think it can't it's like not waist length, but it's like approaching that. And the ringlets are perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're perfect.
Like perfect circles.
This is also very 80s. That curly hair feels very 80s to me.
Yeah, that Sarah Brightman hair.
Yeah. Which had to just be her natural hair.
And then, Andrea Lever was like, that's gotta be all Christines must have this hair.
Yeah. So in the book, because I just started reading it today, Meg is a brunette. And so I wonder if Christine is a blonde, since she's supposed to be Swedish.
Interesting.
Potentially, although I think that books are less constrained by visual contrast in that way that movies often are, so you can tell characters apart. Can we just quickly, in our slightly unstructured discussion of the plot, talk about All I Ask of You?
Yeah.
And here are the two things I want to say about it.
Okay.
The lyric, when she says, say you love, and then he comes in and says, you know I do, and he like cuts her off. The fact that she like doesn't have to finish the line and he's already there to say, you know I do, is like one of my favorite musical moments in a musical. I think it's so sweet that he's like, he knows where she's going with it. And he's like, it's the opposite of all of the Raj and Hammerstein I don't really like you songs.
Yes. They're like, no, we like it. I like you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that. I think it's a really, really sweet song. And it's the one song that like I listened to a lot off of the soundtrack, I feel like, after I saw it for the first time. And I also love that in Point of No Return, she's like totally taken in by the phantom. She's like, yes, I'm into this passion that we're talking about and all this stuff. And then he tries to sing All I Ask of You to her. And that's what snaps her out of it. And she says like, wait, you're this pale imitation of Raoul. And you're trying to take on that kind of love. and it's unnatural for you, and that doesn't speak to the relationship that you and I have. And that's what, like, I do wish that it happened faster, because she sings like a whole lyric and she's like faced away from him, because there's a lot of him holding her waist and her facing away from him. It's like 80% of their scenes together. So there's a lot of opportunity when she's faced away from him to like be reacting, and the audience can see it, but he doesn't. And so I feel like she could realize it faster, and we could see her react and start to make a plan and everything as she's facing us. But I love the contrast of like, here's a Christine and Raoul song versus a Christine and Phantom song.
I will say, like, Point of No Return, I really had to give it to Christine's performance, because it is like, I was guessing, like, what does she actually want? Like, that's where I really feel it, that like, okay, I'm sensing that she is drawn by this, like, this presence with the Phantom singing the song, but then like her taking the mask off felt so still very much like believable, that like that was a choice that she made, that I'm like, I believe that she's like struggling with like what is right for her. And I do agree with your point of like, maybe we could have seen that change a little bit longer, because then just because I wanted to like see more of her kind of like struggle of like, do I do this or not?
Again, with Patrick Wilson absolutely killing it in this movie. The shot they keep going to of him with tears in his eyes, like they're welling up when he sees Christine's reaction to the Phantom and how compelled she clearly is by him, is heartbreaking. It's so good.
Wow. That is 3 Phantom stands. Absolute stands.
I'm sorry. You know what? If you have a problem with it, write us an email. Or join us on our Discord.
Absolutely.
Always plugging.
Here's a little bit of
ABP.
All I Ask of You, followed by Point of No Return.
Solitude. Say you want me with you here beside you. Anywhere you go, let me go too. Christine, that's all.
Fun to see instead of Don Juan, to see this like see that as Faust, like in the original.
Yeah, I do think Faust is interesting because obviously it's like about selling your soul to the devil.
Yeah, it's more like direct, like what the metaphor is.
Yeah.
There.
Well, Don Juan is just a Lothario, right?
Yeah.
Don Juan.
So it's something he wishes he was.
Yes.
But he can't be.
Because there's also like a disco 70s Phantom of the something version that like leans into the Faust thing, and the Phantom like does make a deal with the devil in that one, and so that's like a different angle on the character. Yeah,
I do like. I will give props to Andrew Lloyd Webber that Don Juan Triumphant, the opera, at the very beginning, it's all like dissonances. It's all like melodically very. I like that it's supposed to be like, he wrote this, he's so ahead of his time that no one would ever write something like this in 1870. So I think that's interesting. What else do I want to talk about? Mme Giry harboring a fugitive knowingly.
Not cool.
For what?
Her whole deal is unclear. she sees him when they are children,
Correct.
being kept captive and forced to be jeered at by crowds, which this always happens where it's like a bunch of people laughing. And I'm like, truly, like, why would anyone be laughing in this? I understand people would be like watching in like a weird, what's the word that I want for it? Like they would gawk at
Yes.
a child with a deformity. But like, what? Nothing funny is happening. They
Nothing
wouldn't
funny
be
is
laughing.
happening.
They
I
would
think
just
it's
be staring.
Well, I think if there's any laughter, it would be the like I'm uncomfortable, so I'm starting to laugh because my body doesn't know how else to react to a situation.
Maybe
But-
maybe that's what's happening.
That didn't exist back then. They didn't have that sense.
They didn't have shame. They hadn't invented that.
I also this scene was the most like Baz Luhrmann coded out of all. Like I
Really?
felt I just like the crazed like cinematography, like the angles, the laughing overlays, like the big faces of people.
slow-mo.
Oh, okay. Like just of
Like,
like
just-
faces laughing. Okay,
just like
yeah.
just like
'Cause
the
I feel like Masquerade is like way more Lerman-y to me.
and even the like circusy, because like as they were going through the circus and it's like the bearded lady,
I
blah,
think
blah, blah, like
I think the sequence is good because it does really establish the visual style of the flashback, which is interesting because the movie's a flashback. So it's a flashback in a flashback. Just like
Flashbacks and forwards look the same in this
Right.
movie.
Just
Yeah.
like there's a show within a show.
Anyway, I understand Jerry's motivations to initially hide him.
Sure.
to keep it
Every
this
other choice she makes, don't get it. Her like whole deal is being like, I guess she's like, he deserves Christine because his life has sucked. Like, is that her? She like actively protects him when he kidnaps Christine, and it's really why.
Yeah. It's like it makes me feel like she always had like that maternal instinct to protect him, but then it's like,
But like, would you
would you
Would you,
tell him
like,
like stop obsessing with
help
this
your
one
son?
girl?
I get that, like your son. Let's say he's your son, right?
Mhm.
Your son kidnaps someone, and then you like don't rat him out to the police. But like, you don't help him kidnap someone. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
crime is actively happening now. If you want to go in and be a mother figure, like get down in that cave and be like, Eric, this is not acceptable.
This is not acceptable.
This is not how we do this. Okay.
If
Like,
you want to
that would
talk
be-
to her, go outside,
In
Go talk
Giry's
to her.
defense,
go talk to her, and say, "I like you. You have a beautiful voice." Thank
she
you."
did watch him murder someone, so I also don't know if she was itching to like start confronting him on anything. I
But
think she
you
felt
still
bad
have
enough to help him escape.
him.
Sure.
I just feel like she is helping him to kidnap Christine. That's my
Sure.
feeling on it.
I think
Maybe I'm
she is.
misreading it,
No,
she
I
is.
think that's what's happening.
but like I
think you're right.
cannot understand why one would do that.
Yeah. I think this is the trouble of, now that we know about the Persian, of combining that character into this role,
Yeah,
because
she's also technically the caretaker of Christine. Like she's also Christine's like
and all the girls.
and
Yeah.
all the girls. So like you're supposed to be protecting the girls, but you're also protecting the person that is
But she
targeting.
has
Causing
to
harm
now
to the
know
girls.
the
Yeah.
whole backstory and kind of be helping. And I understand why you would cut the Persian, because it simplifies the narrative if everyone is specifically like has a connection to the theater. So like either the managers or they work there or whatever. Whereas like he's just a Parisian who goes to the shows sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit harder to be like, why would he be here for this moment we're going to talk about notes and prima donnas? Like,
Yeah.
but I think that's when you're like, okay, so then we're gonna combine it with Giry, but also like that makes Giry it's easier for him, I think, because he has, if the Persian is the one who's closest to the Phantom and is kind of knows some of his more nefarious background, but he doesn't have any connection to any of the characters, then it makes him less morally corrupt that he's like letting it happen, because he doesn't know that the Phantom has ulterior motives about wanting to groom
And at least
wed
doesn't like
Christine.
know Christine, right? Like
Yes,
correct.
doesn't make it
yes,
okay,
yes.
but like you can understand why a character would be more passive about someone else's fate if they're a stranger to them.
Correct. Yeah.
Or even like, well, I was gonna say like if it was having to be connected to the opera at some point, like if it was like one of the new managers or like the old manager that was retiring, maybe that's why he's leaving because
Because
You can't afford this ransom. 20,000 francs, according to my fast research, is just north of 100K a month. Can you imagine? And truly,
But
what is he doing with that?
but
Just buying
didn't-
more candles? Like, but he doesn't leave. Why does he need that much
Where's
money?
he spending it?
He's building a full aqueduct underneath. The
Oh, it's just
opera.
booby traps. It's
It's just booby
100%.
traps.
It's like that tweet of like, I'm spending like 150 on groceries and like 75 goes to my electric bill and like $3,000 a month on scented candles. But it's that
Yes,
it's
yes,
booby
yes.
traps
It's booby
instead.
traps.
It's please help
I
my
think his
family
also
starving.
might be scented candles, to be quite honest.
But I'm sorry, but didn't the music box sell for like 20 francs at the auction?
Yeah.
okay, but he can't. Guys,
How
this
did that
man,
happen?
this man,
Inflation though, because that's like 50 years in the future.
That's that huge?
this man invented.
No, but it's 20,000 francs a month.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This man invented candles that immediately alight as soon as they come out of water.
It is
so I mean,
impressive.
he is using the money he's
Yes.
getting.
He's absolutely an engineer, a scientist.
He's an architect.
Full wax
Like,
figure
it's
of
a
Emmy
genius,
Rossum.
monsieur. He's a genius. I just don't like. Why are we back to protecting male geniuses again? Like, come on. Why are we back here?
I mean, it's like 1911. I don't know. We're back to it. I think.
No, I mean like us as showgays because we did this.
I think we're gonna get it a lot more.
Oh,
I don't
did we
think this
take
is...
any of what we just said as sincere?
No, I'm just saying like we're just back to.
I think this is a well-worn trope that we will see many more times on the show of celebrating troubled men in musicals. I don't think this will be the last. And I would say of all the musicals about troubled geniuses, he is the one who mostly pretty much doesn't get away with what he wants.
Yeah.
He doesn't get what he
Yeah.
wants in the end. Somehow, I still see the scene where she does the "God grant me courage to show you you are not alone" and kisses him, and my heart like swells every time, even though
Really?
I know he's a bad person. And like we shouldn't have this consistent narrative in media
Yes.
where women must save men
save
and
men.
fix their problems for them and teach them how to be better people. Men should be able to like figure some of this shit out on their own. But as a person who's been living in a basement for probably the last 30 years of his life, I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass.
I thought you
were
meant
ranking
you.
yourself.
I thought you
Yeah.
were relating to him.
As a
like-
person
Me.
who has
as
been
a
in a basement
fellow
before.
basement dweller,
Yeah.
I sympathize. I also felt like that before watching this again, I always just like took that scene as like Stockholm syndrome, like because she has like fully been swept up and believed like what the grooming basically, like this is the full result of the grooming, and it was him changing his ways or like him realizing what he's done
Mhm.
that then it causes her to go back to Raoul. But I think like this viewing, it made me think like it wasn't necessarily that she was like, no, you're right, I am gonna go with you. It's like full just an expression of like, I feel so bad for you that because you have never experienced love in your life, like it's what drawn you into this, and like I just want to show you that like you don't have to, and that's what the kiss meant. Like or like yeah, like that's kind of like how I interpreted it this time, because she went to Raoul in like full force of like, no, I want, like this is what I want, but it's just so sad for me to see that like this is how you feel like the world should be.
I do think it's interesting that almost every other adaptation of this work views this as a horror piece. Because the fact that it ends with this sequence in which she finds him like the most pitiable creature on the planet, kisses him, and then he is like shown compassion and love for the first time and immediately like crumbles, I think is like proof as to why it's literally not. I mean, it can also be horror, but I think that's why it's like a romance at its like core is like it's a story about love, and
Yeah.
people who don't get it can be bad people.
And that the original novel is sympathetic to him and is trying to make a point that like if society had been less awful to him, he might have turned out differently.
Yeah.
I agree, RJ, that like I think that what you're describing is what they wanted us to get out of it. The thing I wish is that for the final scene, the music pulled back a little bit more, because I wish that moment were sort of like quieter,
Stripped
and
a little bit.
Yeah, stripped down a little bit to feel like this sense of like, let's put all of like the baggage aside, the question of like, do you or do you not have my fiance in a chokehold right now? But like, let's put that aside for a minute and just say like human to human, like everyone deserves love. I think it's a sweet concept, but I think it's like a little too melodramatic of a moment to fit the emotion of what's happening. So I don't love the way that they convey it, but I do get what they're going for.
Yeah.
I want to close out this conversation because I think we're drawing near the end here. I would like to spend the next 6 hours discussing Minnie Driver as Carlotta because she is having so much fun. Every time she's on camera, she does something funny. Every line reading is perfect. She's so iconic in this movie.
Let me say this. I am not a Phantom apologist. I am a Carlotta apologist because she's right to quit this production.
She is absolutely right.
Somebody almost takes her out with a backdrop falling on her, which is a dangerous thing to happen. And they're like, Phantom, sometimes that happens. She's like, no, it doesn't sometimes. Like, it's unacceptable for it to just occasionally happen. It should not be happening. These are unsafe working conditions, and I am leaving until you figure this out. And also, she's 100% right.
She's 100% right. And they literally, it falls, they look up, and Joseph Bouquet, who does die in this movie, literally is like, Gibbs. As God's my judge, I wasn't at my post.
I know.
Where were you? That's the problem.
Everyone's like, what to be done about that?
Nothing.
He simply wasn't doing his job.
Write him up, girl.
Is there any consequence that we could maybe... Yeah. He's also a perv. Everybody's a perv in this movie.
Yeah.
We like, as part of our little introduction, is like, and then this guy like looks through a peephole into the women's dressing room. Just like cute showbiz things.
Well, the fact that this is what's crazy. The mirror in her dressing room that goes to the Phantom's lair, that's not normally her dressing room. So is he just watching Carlotte? Like, have you thought about that?
No, I hadn't. That's a good point. I was thinking about how I want to see a flashback of just him giving Emmy Rossum a voice lesson, and it's just like extremely like
purely
normal.
Technical. Absolutely.
Like, okay, but that glottal, you really have to like lift on that because otherwise it's not going to sound like, it's just like the most
you have to come from the note above and go down. You can't reach up to it.
Up.
You gotta land on the note. Land on the note.
Your diaphragm wants to go down, especially if you're singing a freaking corset. Yeah, that's a good point. That is funny. I think
that's a fun sketch.
Emmy, I'm gonna reach through the mirror, and Christine, I'm gonna reach through the mirror, and I'm just gonna hold your stomach because I want you to really emphasize your diaphragm. I really want to feel those muscles interacting. So stupid.
I think he probably has every mirror. He has every mirror rigged up, and he does threaten his way into getting Christine the lead. So I guess he knows that she'll eventually be in that dressing room too, right?
Yeah.
So he like had it ready to go he was like waiting for her big opening night to like finally,
welcome her into his sanctuary.
And isn't it like Emmy Rossum and Minnie Driver famously didn't like each other during this?
Oh, really?
So there has been like Minnie Driver has said that she's worked with someone who was a bit of a diva. And people online have basically convinced themselves that she's referring to Emmy Rossum in this. Here's the only reason I would maybe push against that. Emmy Rossum was 16 when they started filming this movie. So, like, I don't know how much one as an adult... Like, I'm sure Emmy Rossum may have been annoying because most Sopranos are, just generally speaking. But
as
a former soprano, but
basement dwelling soprano.
Yeah. But I don't know if like I think Minnie Driver is probably enough to be like,
yes.
They also like aren't really in the movie together that much. Like I don't know that they have enough scenes that they would have had enough set time together that they could have formed that strong of opinions of each other.
Yeah.
And my headcanon is that it's Matt Damon. And that's who is
Wait, what movie is that?
Good Will Hunting.
Good Will
right.
Hunting.
Probably. I mean, it's also probably the thing where everybody just assumes that someone who acts inappropriately or untoward on set is a woman.
Yeah.
Because of the prima donna narrative. Cue prima donna.
Cue. Music. Cue.
I like Minnie's performance in this. I've already said that.
Mhm.
I really like this song, and I think the character that she is decided to employ in this movie, where she is like fully doesn't speak English, but she sings with a perfect English accent, is so funny. Even when it's like, because like if it would be one thing if it was like when she's performing on stage and she's singing, she obviously knows exactly the way she's supposed to sound.
Mhm.
She has the like one line in Il Muto where she says like, the old fool is leaving. So she has like a great accent for that. So fine. But then like Prima Donna is a song that's in their heads, or however you decide that characters in musicals interact with like real live singing in the moment.
Mhm.
So I think it's funny that even then she still sounds like a perfect opera star. But like when she's not on stage and is just talking, she's like, Andiamo, bring my dog in my box. Bye bye and ciao.
Yeah, that's true. She was dubbed for the singing for this movie, so I guess it is also possible that they like didn't give specific enough instructions to the voice actor. But I also think that like there's a lot of jokes about her not being good, but she is good. Like I don't quite understand. I think it can be, the sound can be a little bit piercing maybe sometimes. I understand how it could be too much, because there is a bit where they're like, there's people who are cleaning the house and then they like say she's gonna sing and they put in earphones and or like earplugs, and that is funny and I think could work in terms of like it's just too much, right? Rather than like it's bad, but it feels like they're saying it's bad and it's decidedly not.
She wouldn't be
the lead soprano. Yeah, she wouldn't be a star.
Yeah, I just think this performance is so funny, and they always get like an actual opera star for like the productions on stage, and they're so good. And ironically, Carlotta, who has the highest notes in the show, is not the one who gets double cast, because there's famously on Broadway and I think still in the West End, there are two Christines. So there's a Christine for the Thursday night show and a Saturday matinee, and then the other 6 performances are the main Christine. But Carlotta's the same 8 days a week. Carlotta hits that like high G or whatever the hell she hits at the end of Prima Donna, which is psycho. I think that's it. Do I have anything else I want to say?
The last thing I would want to bring up is Meg's riding pants, because that was like a sleigh at the end of the movie where she like comes in with her long blonde hair and these like this look like, which is like a Luke now, I feel like, the high-waisted like black riding pant. She comes in and she's like, oh, she sees the mask, and it's just like,
you did say that we needed to come back to me saying Meg was forgettable, so this is the moment.
Oh, it was about Love Never Dies, where Meg is like, you think I'm so you don't remember that I'm here doing all this work for you, and then she kills like.
Correct.
Imagine, this is not a character. Meg in this is not a character you'd be like, oh, then she becomes a murderer in the next.
Like she becomes obsessed with a phantom. I'm like, no,
it doesn't seem like that. I mean, I guess she's the one who like is interested in what's happening. But I always read that as especially now that I know that like the book is written from like an account perspective that's like, I'm just trying to tell the truth about the situation.
She fulfills that role. You think? Like she's trying to she's putting the pieces
with her picking up the mask at the end of the show.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it's 100% based on her being the one that picks up the mask at the end, and then people are like, well, I guess the story has to start from there. She picked up the mask.
Yeah.
Another fun fact I learned from researching is that the half mask ended up being invented because the microphone situation, like it didn't work with a full mask, which is why there's a full mask on the poster, because they made that before the costuming was solidified. And I love the half mask has become like the most iconic part of the whole character, and it was all just a logistical costuming decision. But I think it's great because it also has like, there's obviously like a duality, like half human, half monster situation. Yeah.
Jekyll and Hyde. I will go out on just a note I want to say.
Okay.
Carlotta sings Think of Me, and then Christine follows it up with Think of Me a couple minutes later. And they lower... it is lowered for Christine from where Carlotta is singing it.
But they made such a big deal of like, oh, Christine Daae could sing it, sir. But you could literally be like... Oh,
any of these girls could sing
I've already
transpose it down.
I've already transposed it down, so I guess anyone could sing it.
Right.
So anyone...
I can sing it. Think of me... Think of me for... Anyway, we're going to listen to both of those, and then we'll be in critics.
Okay. Think of me fondly when we've said goodbye. Remember me once in a while. Please promise me you'll try. Then you'll find that once again you long to take your heart back and be free. If you ever find a moment, spare a thought for me.
Okay, so on Rotten Tomatoes, this has a 33% rating, but the audience score is like 88%. So
okay.
the girls are divided. Stella Papamichael from the BBC writes, even behind a mask, Butler exudes a seductive intensity, while Rossum is the perfect embodiment of wide-eyed innocence. Sadly, these qualities are undermined as they're forced to sing through their dialogue and adopt grand postures. Relentless vibrato, quivering lips, and heaving bosoms amount to a ludicrous melodrama that quickly becomes insufferable. Ironically, it's Driver's tantrums and Tiara's portrayal of La Carlotta that rises above the overbearing histrionics to offer much-needed light relief. Despite hit songs like The Music of the Night, the key musical set pieces merge into a flat monotone, not because the actors can't sing, but because Schumacher demonstrates a total lack of imagination. He relies on lavish sets rather than inventive choreography, and after drowning out any hint of sincere emotion in more intimate scenes, the overall effect is garish and nauseating. The Phantom of the Opera will haunt you, but for all the wrong reasons.
After drowning out any hint of sincere emotion in more intimate scenes, but I don't want
It's a melodrama. Do people not know what a melodrama is?
It's just that she's like, it's a melodrama. So, but we're like, yeah, it's a melodrama. So, you know, like it's great.
It's also, that's what it's adapted from. It's weird. There were like a few that I looked at and they were just like one-liners, but they were all like, he didn't really try to change the musical. And it was like, was he supposed to?
Yeah.
It seems to have worked for like 20 years at this point. So I
do think that probably it might have been a little bit better if Andrew Lloyd Webber had given up a little bit of control over the whole thing, having the guy who did the stage musical have so much say over the movie. There maybe would be things they could have explored otherwise, but like, you know, it is a melodramatic musical.
This is the opposite of the Will Gluck Annie situation. The people who made this movie
they love it. Yeah.
A little bit too much, maybe. Just a tad.
Owen Gleiberman from Entertainment Weekly writes, not vulgar enough. Andrew Lloyd Webber's horror operetta looks expensive, but it's been filmed without decadent atmosphere or visual flow. Emmy Rossum has an unforced sweetness, but Gerard Butler as the Phantom sings like a meatloaf stuffed with too much garlic.
I mean, that's funny. I don't know how you would say that it's not a decadent atmosphere. I truly don't know what decadence you're looking for.
Yeah, I don't.
Is it not vulgar enough? She's 16, bro. Like, I don't know if that's what you're I don't know if that's where you're going, but
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird because it feels like all the critics who didn't like it, it felt like they were like, oh, it doesn't have enough horror elements for me. And I'm like, I think you just don't like the musical, and that's fine. But we're not, I don't know. I guess we are. If this is the movie interpretation of the musical, then I guess this is your time as a movie critic to be like, I think this is a bad musical. It seems, I don't know.
I think it is fair to review a film not based on like how well did they just adapt the stage musical. Like you have to see it as a new piece, and so you can say if you don't like the source, then you don't like the source.
Yeah. So Roger Ebert actually liked this movie and did give it like a positive review. Even though in the longer piece he says, I have seen Phantom multiple times on stage and I have disliked it every single time I've seen it.
Wow.
So I'm sure his wife just really liked it and would force him along to go see it anytime it was like in Chicago or whatever. But he says, this has been, I realize, a nutty review. I am recommending a movie that I do not seem to like very much, but part of the pleasure of moviegoing is pure spectacle, of just sitting there and looking at great stuff and knowing it looks terrific. There wasn't much Schumacher could have done with the story or the music he was handed, but in the areas over which he held sway, he has triumphed. This is such a fabulous production that by recasting 2 of the 3 leads and adding some better songs, it could have been, well, great.
That gives me a little bit of like reassurance that like, okay, because the way he says like, yes, there is the pleasure of seeing a movie that is just pure spectacle. And I feel like we have watched movies in Showgays that are pure spectacle, but we have not, like, at least Adam and I have not, like, received it well or positive. That I'm like, okay, then I think it's because I don't know. I'm, like, understanding a little bit more of my own media literacy and, like, my own, like...
Are you talking about Moulin Rouge?
Yeah, well, for you, I mean, I liked Moulin Rouge a little bit more. But, like, I think of, like, The Showmans and, like that was created like with full grandeur, like full spectacle, but they also were trying to like spoon feed us an inspiring story that was not inspiring, you know? So I think like it was those things, but like for this one, it's like it's pure spectacle with a source material that knows exactly what it is. Like it is what it is, and like being turned into a movie, it's exactly that. Like,
it's also, the story is tight. It's a tight plot. Like it's like boy steals girl. Boy lets girl go. Other boy gets girl. Girl can't decide between boys.
Ballet instructor explains boys'
childhood trauma. One boy almost dies in a lake.
I feel like if I were to try to, I think I could tighten up the musical a bit in the like it feels like she gets kidnapped like too many times, and I do feel like the pace of events at the beginning feels really fast. Of like she's she's singing on stage, she's being brought down to the Phantom. Like that all feels like it could have been building some of the tension. The
only thing I would get rid of in this musical, and it's crazy because I love the song so much, is "Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again," because the whole
it kind of stops the
flow. That's the like slowest part of the movie.
Yeah, that's true.
But other than that, I think like generally just like beat by beat, the plot really like kind of
moves.
It's not like some movies now where I feel like they'll make a movie and then they're like, and also this minor character does need their own arc and this minor character needs a full arc. And
that's
it's like
true.
We didn't get bogged down in like, and now we have to wrap.
I like that Meg was not.
I guess I wish that like the first time she got kidnapped, he like didn't fully take her down to his cave or something, so that it felt like there was like an additional layer to like
the layer.
She's really in the belly. Additional layer to the layer. She's like really in the belly of the beast by the finale. Do you know what I mean? Like it was a little like, oh, okay, she's in peril, but she's like in the same situation we saw her in the first 20 minutes of the movie. So
that's what could have been interesting if they had been like that first time she's down there is like full dream, where like it's just her vision of what this,
and
like
then the second time it's like
second time she sees it for real.
Yeah, she's like, oh, the stalactites or whatever.
The mice,
which ones?
The rats.
Stalagmites?
I don't know which one's which.
I don't
They
remember.
could both
I
be
never
there.
remember.
Yeah.
Just like
a lot of calcium down there.
One of them's got an M in it.
Yep. So on Letterboxd, I realize I've never said the overall rating that these movies have on Letterboxd, so I'll start doing that now. This movie has a 3.4 out of 5 stars.
Okay.
Emily F9 gave it 1 star and says, living in a basement and demanding 20,000 francs a month for doing nothing is the kind of life I aspire to have.
Absolutely.
Ideal. Terrible Pun Name gave it a star and says, at last, a movie for me, a sexually repressed hermit who can't sing and fucking loves candles. And X7R gave it 5 stars and also loved the film. You can add it as a favorite and said this film is horrendous. 5 out of 5 stars.
Which I think is like Adam's.
That's
Adam's take.
That's my take on this film.
Yeah.
Would I say that this is like the top 100 greatest films of all time? Literally no. Would I also probably turn this on before I would turn on any in that list? Probably yeah. Who is our MVP this week? I'm going to go first. This is going to be no surprise to anyone. It is Minnie Driver as La Carlotta. RJ.
Yeah, I mean,
Molly.
Cool. I agree. So I will then give mine as well to Emmy Rossum. I wish that they hadn't cast a person who's underage, but I do think she kills it, and it's really impressive that she was able to do it at such a young age, and I think she carries the film well.
Mm-hmm.
I also agree that it should be Minnie Driver, but for the sake of picking someone else, I will pick Patrick Wilson as Raoul.
Yeah.
He really is great. I mean, there is no bad Patrick Wilson performance.
It's true.
Sorry.
He's really good in Angels
He's
in
really
America.
good in Angels. He's really good in all of the because he what I appreciate about him is that he picks really complicated roles. I mean, this is probably the most like clear role that he might have had, like most like stock maybe. But he picks really like Little Children and Hard Candy. Those are not easy roles to play, and he does a
He's
really
in
great job.
Zack Snyder's Watchmen, and I don't love that character, but I like him in it. I think he plays it well.
So
Yeah.
I think he's definitely like
And now he just does horror movies.
yeah.
Do it. We
Get
love
your
it,
coin.
King.
Get your
Just
coin.
like this.
Just like
A
this.
Phantom horror movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Molly, what's your closer this week?
Pick a Golden Age musical that you have to let Andrew Lloyd Webber redo, and his version will become wildly popular.
It's ironic that this is what you choose because famously he is mounting Bad Cinderella, which is his version of Cinderella. Well, it's not necessarily Rodgers and Hammerstein's,
but it's Cinderella, yeah.
So that's funny.
I mean, if he is going all the way with like Phantom, let's redeem a bad guy. Maybe he can fix Carousel.
Oh, there's no one I trust left.
I don't think that's a wise decision.
I don't think it's a wise decision, but I want him to do it. Let's just fully go out on a big bang, Andrew.
So your decision is Carousel.
It's
Yeah.
going to become
Okay.
wildly popular. Did you forget that part of the Faustian bargain?
Yeah. RJ, or I'm sorry,
you were
Molly.
responsible for making Carousel wildly popular. I just want you to think about that.
I want his name on what makes it
Attached.
Attached. I just want to see what that world is.
Also, is it an adaptation of the musical or is it an adaptation of the source
It
material?
would be
of
the source
musical?
material. So
Okay,
like
okay.
how would he deal with all of this?
Mhm.
Okay.
I do hope that there are trains involved.
Yeah. And I guess anyone in 2023 is like going to make Billy less sympathetic. So
Yeah.
maybe it'd be fun. My pick is Oklahoma. I think he could actually kill it on Oklahoma.
I think so too. Not Woklahoma, like full opposite, like spectacular Oklahoma.
Spectacular
Absolutely.
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I think I would like to see him try to apply the level of opulence of Phantom to
A
the
non-opulent
Southwest,
Yeah.
rural Southwest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to see him do Bye Bye Birdie.
No, you don't know. Do you?
I do because he loves doing like he's done it in multiple stuffs where he like references like that Elvis type of sound, like he does it in Joseph. So he would love to do that kind of thing again, where he gets to like explore different musical genres throughout the musical, and I think he would do it. I actually think he would have fun doing it.
I know, but I don't want him to touch my beloved Bye Bye Birdie.
It's just going to be more popular than Bye Bye Birdie.
Yeah, that's true. I'll always have my Bye Bye Birdie.
Go Go Gonzo, or whatever he ends up calling it.
Hunka Hunka Burn in Love.
Ugh, yeah.
It's gonna be called that.
Well, this was a fruitful endeavor. I want to thank both of you for, reviving
Our first revival.
this production.
A new yearly tradition. If we last
Yeah.
another year, we get to pick another one from the vault.
The Disney Vault will open.
The Showgays
next
Vault.
year. Yeah.
Opens once a year.
Once a year. So yeah, thanks for listening.
There's a link to the Discord on the show notes if you want to talk
Check
about
out those
this
show
movie.
notes.
There's going to be all these Lindsay Ellis videos on there. You've got a full night of activity, and if you want, watch those videos. Go to the Discord, talk to Molly about them.
Mhm.
Talk to all
I
of
would
us.
love for somebody to talk about Lindsay Ellis videos with me on Discord. Discord, for those who are not familiar, basically a big group chat where we're
It
all
is.
in there talking about Showgays.
Big
Yes,
group
there is a
chat.
Showgaze channel. You can talk about it. There are other channels too if you want to peruse and see what the other communities are talking about in the Ampliverse.
Start following some other Ampliverse shows.
Absolutely. But if you want Showgaze content, mama, that's where you find us. You can talk to us there.
Thanks for listening. We're gonna end with
Prima donna. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It might sound just a teeny
Oh.
like something by Puccini. Thank you for listening to the best revival of a podcast, Showgays. You can find us on social media. Adam is at Adam Noecker on Twitter. RJ is at RJFoodRocks on Instagram, and Molly is at Molly Matiny on Instagram. This episode was edited and mixed by Adam Noecker. This has been an Ampliverse production. You can find our show page and more information at theampliverse.com. If you'd like to send us your own takes on the movie we just watched, reach out to us via email and we might read it aloud on the show. Our email is showgaysmoviemusical@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to help others find the show. And now, as always, the show must go on, so stick around to hear what we're going to be watching next episode.
I tell the city how to think. I tell the city how to vote. I shape its future.
Publisher Joseph Pulitzer ran New York City.
There's lots of money down there in those streets, gentlemen. I want to know how I can get more of it.
Newsboy Jack Kelly was running from his past.
You were in jail?
Well, I was starving, so I stole some food.
He had nothing until Pulitzer's greed
Charge the newsies more for their papers.
They can't get away with this.
gave him something to fight for.
Are we just gonna take what they give us? Or are we gonna strike?
Walt Disney Pictures presents
Pulitzer me on the world, but he don't know.
an all-new musical event featuring 7 new songs from the Academy Award-winning composer of The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast.
You're going up against the most powerful man in New York City.
You have to fight them.
I want an example, May, to those who would dare to lead.
If we don't act together, then we're none. We don't stick together, we're none.
I'll break you, boy.
So what's it gonna be?
In 1899, he challenged the power of the press and discovered the power of the people.
Sometimes all it takes is a voice
Strike!
that becomes 100, and then 1,000.
Christian Bale and Robert Duvall. Newsies.
Discovering voices, building worlds.